All right, I'm going to say this is the most of all the days, all 365 days in the year. Hell, I think it's a leap year this year, so maybe I should double check that counting for Tyrese Halliburton's birthday, falling on the old leap birthday. I'm going to say most snoozed day of the entire calendar. I mean, we're talking, I'm going to say over under average American, 2.5 snoozes on this July 8th.
Did you have an issue?
I did not, but I had the issue of like anxiety-filled sleep back to reality.
Yeah. So you had the Sunday scaries last night.
For me started like Saturday morning at 10 a.m.
Well, they didn't start on me on Saturday, but they definitely started on Sunday about 3 o'clock, where I'm like, yeah, we got to get back to the old grinding the axe on Monday morning. It's good seeing you guys.
Punching the time card.
Summer holiday on a Thursday, I feel like just plays in to that. Great seeing both of you. That is Andy Sweeney, Mark Dykton. I am, of course, Kevin Bowen, and this is the Wake Up Call with KB and Andy here on a Monday, July 8th. Easy for me to say. I guess a little splash in the face, water-wise, extra cup of coffee. How about Rick Carlisle? Join us at 8 o'clock.
I like it. And, I mean, can we give the people behind the scenes, we're talking about who we won on Monday and everything else. And, I don't know, our conversation kind of just dropped off, right? Figured we'd talk in the morning. And then KB hits us over the head with, Rick Carlisle just called me. He wants to come on the air. I'm like, all right, well, there's manna from heaven. Let's go.
Yeah, I'm sitting there last night on the couch. Luckily, both the kids went to bed somewhat easily, which was a minor miracle.
Yeah, but they don't have Sunday scaries.
No,
because their Monday's fine.
Yeah,
it's a summer Monday. Who's got it better than them?
They do not have Sunday scaries at all. And Maddie was on the phone with her father, and all of a sudden, my phone, lights up, and I'm like, does that say Rick Carlisle on the call log there? It's one of those things where it's like, man, I know I had a few drinks over the holiday weekend, but I'm pretty sure I haven't had one today. Sure enough, it was the head coach of the Indiana Pacers, and it is, I would say a notable day for them as a franchise, and, this week in general, a few more news items for the Pacers. So today at 11 a.m., they will announce the Pascal Siakam re-signing, and that will be, one of these kind of bigger press conferences that you're used to seeing. All right, I should say used to seeing with, like, the Halliburton deal, from a couple of years ago, or even, go back to Victor Oladipo's contract where, I would assume this will be something either in the St. Vincent Center or even on the court over at Gainbridge Fieldhouse with Kevin Pritchard, with Rick Carlisle, with Pascal Siakam, of course. So that is a big start to the week for them. Then you'll get into, Summer League stuff. They'll head out to Vegas for the beginning of that for them coming up late in the week. And, as we watch it here in our little Pacer-centric bubble, you see Tyrese Halliburton start to participate with Team USA. So certainly multiple things we could throw Rick Carlisle's way. He, among other Pacer staff members, will actually be at the USA-Canada game Wednesday night.
Oh, okay, good.
So, yeah, that was part of our conversation last night. I was like, hey, usually in Vegas, these teams get together for some sort of bonding, but I'm like, well, you've got multiple guys with Olympic obligations. He's like, yeah, actually, we're going to be out there for that first exhibition game for Team USA. So, plenty to chat with the Pacers head coach about in our first conversation with him in about a month and a half.
Yeah, it's going to be good to see, to hear from him and see, what he's got cooking. He said he was going to take some time off, basically, but also be on the forefront of getting Pascal Siakam back in a Pacer uniform. And so that is what happened. You said that's going to be at 11 o'clock today is the press conference for Pascal Siakam. So that's good news. And then I just love the Summer League. The Summer League's become quite the party, has it not? I mean, the crowds are big. Everyone goes out there. It's in Vegas, so you're having a good time, especially if you're in the Vegas Summer League. So I'm interested, and we can ask him about this. Over the weekend, the conversation about Jarris Walker kind of running the show at times, playing the 3 in the Summer League. I think that will be interesting, but goodness, KB, we can talk about a bunch with Rick Carlisle. I mean, just think in the last month and a half or so, you have Tyrese now off to Team USA. He healed that hamstring up to be ready to do that. You re-sign Siakam. You re-sign Obi Toppin. We'll see exactly maybe where they are with Nembhard and TJ McConnell. The Eastern Conference has fortified themselves with with some big-time free agents. The Boston Celtics won the championship. So, man, there's tons to get into with Carlisle. How long was your conversation with Rick?
Wasn't too long.
Okay.
A couple minutes. Yeah, we didn't, it was one of those things. I was like, boy, this shows you who Rick Carlisle is as a human, that he opts for the phone call over the text. Us
He's
millennials,
old school. Yeah.
Probably would not have just dialed each other up. So I did appreciate that. I was probably startled. I'd love to hear my audio off of that. I'm like, oh, hey, Coach. Yeah. Great to hear you. Not only will we have Rick Carlisle here on this Monday morning, but, maybe we can tease it a little bit more tomorrow. Fingers crossed for, I'd say, a rather marquee guest joining the show here coming up midweek. We're going to be out at Cambridge Fieldhouse on Wednesday morning. We don't do many shows off-site, but the Indiana Fever will take on the Washington Mystics noon on Wednesday. And we will be out there for the show, and we'll see if we can maybe lure in a guest that I would say had a pretty good Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, might have had a triple-double. We'll see if that happens. My question for you is, this is a game where there's going to be a lot of kids at this game.
Yeah, I'm actually taking Rosie and her cousin to it.
I was wondering. I didn't know if that was built into like summer camps, and then Caitlin Clark gets drafted, and then suddenly
they're in scramble mode.
Well, suddenly you can throw this game at 7:00 at night and maybe get 15,000 people. Yeah, but good for them.
Again, this is something you see with like the Indians a lot with their homestands. I've been to some of these businessmen or women special here. Even for the Fever in years past, I have a feeling it'll be a little bit of a different atmosphere. And certainly Saturday, you got to peg that as their win of the year. I think on multiple levels. Something that I was a little frustrated about with the Fever early in the season, Andy, was they would play these teams for a second time, and you really didn't see a whole lot of improvement. Like, look at the Liberty, for example. They played them 3 times before Saturday. They lost to them by 36 twice. Like, so it's like, wait a minute, when you see a team a second time, third time, you want to see some improvement. And obviously, they did that on Saturday, whether it's Clark's first ever triple-double. And I was amazed when I saw some of the stats of like, wait a minute, the first rookie in the history of the league?
Yeah, I couldn't believe that.
I mean, we're talking 25 years.
I know, yeah.
And then the first time in franchise history?
And great players. Not only 25 years, but great players.
Sure.
Hall of Fame level players.
And I guess I assumed that Tamika Catchings would have had one, but, if you look at Clark in the last handful of games, double-digit assists in 4 of those 5. 2 things. One, I do think she's been a little bit smarter with the basketball. If you look at it, just 4 turnovers for her on Saturday. That number might not seem like a small number. It is a small number for her this season. And I also think her teammates just are getting used to, oh, wow, you better have your head on a swivel and eyes in the back of your head with her because you never know when you're going to get that pass from her. So that stood out. And then I know it's not sexy, and I know it's not necessarily going to be the thing that, SportsCenter shows on their highlights, but they showed up defensively when they needed it the most. The Liberty scored 16 points in the fourth quarter. So that, to me, probably the things that stand out the most about a huge win for them.
What did you make of, and we can play this sound later on, it's Sabrina Ionescu, right? Is that how you say her last name?
Yeah.
Did you see her
she
come
did the
out?
Steph Curry three-point shootout,
yeah,
right?
She
in the,
did.
Lucas Oil?
She gave the compliment, but a backhanded compliment, that it's hard to beat a team 4 times in a row, and that this was their Super Bowl. That this was a Super Bowl for the Indiana Fever over the weekend. But she did say they got a lot better. So, again, it's a backhanded compliment.
I tend to think that the other opponents view the Fever a little bit Super Bowl-like.
Well, I mean, their marketing departments do.
It's going to be your highest rated game all year, right?
It's going to be the highest rated game. You're probably going to move to a stadium that can hold more than 8,000 to 10,000 people and everything else. So not a bad weekend for Caitlin Clark. I'm getting the triple-double. I've been screaming around here. I feel like the last 5 or 6 games, KB, that she's going to get one of those.
She got it Saturday with what, 8 minutes to go in the fourth?
She's been so close
7 minutes to go in the
to
fourth,
getting one. The points, that's rarely going to be an issue. It's just been an assist here. It's been she got up to 9 rebounds in a game last week. So good for her. How about that? I mean, her, and then you look at Angel Reese, 13 straight double-doubles.
Yeah.
As I've said last week that whoever votes on this is going to have to make a decision if they're going to split the Rookie of the Year award.
Well, I think an absolute compliment to both Clark and Reese. And again, I don't put them necessarily in the same level in terms of the hype and the anticipation, but both, came into the league with tons of eyes on them and, critiques, every single minute for both of them. For each of them to have lived up to it so far, I mean, is pretty darn amazing. It was kind of funny. I got into a debate with my brother-in-law over the weekend about, like, one of the things, he's a LeBron hater. I'm more of a LeBron defender. And I think what is truly impressive to me about what LeBron has done in his career is at 16, he's on the front cover of Sports Illustrated. I would say 95% of 16-year-olds are just trying to avoid blowing off their hand over July 4th. And for you to have all the hype, all the pressure, the weight of, in some cases, whatever, a race, a sex, however you want to describe it, on your shoulders, and to then live up to it, to me, is just wildly impressive. And again, Clark and Reese, it's different. I think the pressure, the expectations, I think Caitlin's got more of it. But, in Reese's case, to kind of run your mouth as much as she does and then back it up.
Oh, yeah.
Had to, because it's not like she was, the number 2 overall pick. It's not like she was thought of in that same light as the can't miss prospect. So both of them, tremendous starts to the season. And, selfishly for our market, seeing that rivalry for years to come, I think will be awesome.
Speaking of Bron, did you like how Bronny did not play in Game 2 of his summer league? Did you follow it all? Did you follow that over the weekend?
Did he have 4 points in Game 1?
He had 4 points in Game 1. Had a little knee flare-up. Did not play in Game 2. Bronny James already. Summer league.
Do we make a load
Feel the
management?
power. Well, I mean, there's a joke in there. Yeah, of course. There's like father, like son. There's a joke in there somewhere.
Now, I saw Khalil Ware was outstanding.
I watched some of that.
Summer league. What do you have, 26 and 11, something like that?
Ware looked pretty good. He looked like, you've done this before. And I think this is the biggest hope if you're a Pacer fan. You want to see this with Jarris Walker, do you not? You want to watch Jarris Walker. And, you saw this with Nembhard, I believe, last year. When you're watching these guys, you're like, they're not summer league players. They're, 3 steps above most of the guys that they're playing on the floor. So if you're a Pacer fan, you saw it last year. You want to see it this year with Jarris Walker. And I thought at times you saw it with Khalil Ware yesterday, quite frankly.
I remember saying this to you last week, Andy, like with Walker in summer league, and again, the Pacers will have their first summer league game coming up on Friday. And certainly a question we'll toss Rick Carlisle's way here when he joins us at 8. But, it's weird for me with Walker in that what they're asking of him is not summer league flash. Sure, you would like to see him, to your point, score 20 points and look like a guy that is in a class above everybody else. But, what do they want out of him? They want defense. They want force. They want the ability to do, I think, some of the dirty work he did at Houston. So I think it's going to be interesting in, looking at Walker of, it's not just going to be necessarily watch the highlight film of him, going 7 of 13 from the field or something like that. Sure, you certainly want that. But, Chad Buchanan, I think, even said it to us when he joined us after the draft of, we have enough offense.
Right.
I'm paraphrasing
we're
a little
scoring
bit
all we need. Right.
With what Chad Buchanan said. But, can you do some of the other stuff? And Gennaro Pargo, Pacers Summer League coach, we hope to have him on at some point this week. He said over the weekend, Walker is going to be the starting 3 when they get out there. Again, who he's defending, obviously, is not going to be who he's defending or who he could possibly defend, I should say, coming up this season if he gets into the rotation. But certainly something to keep an eye on. We'll continue to our Colts question of the day. We are just a hair above 2 weeks out from their start to training camp. I think it's an interesting question in terms of 3 guys that have some big seasons on the horizon. Which one do you feel most confident in to prove it? You guys have a good 4th? Good,
man.
Holiday weekend?
Everything was fantastic. It was a long weekend. The Sunday scaries were popping. I went out again on Saturday to the Indiana Downs. Indiana Derby was out there. So enjoyed my time out there. I mean, it could not have been a nicer day.
That's a staple quickly becoming for you, right?
Yeah, I went out there twice last week, so it was a good time. I knew some people that were in town. It's a great event, fun event. They've redone a lot of things there, so their growth. They had at one point, I had a buddy that that visits there quite frequently. He said by about noon they had as many people there as they usually have for the entire day. So it was full there, and it was a good time. But what about you guys? Otherwise, I did nothing. I actually did a lot of stuff around the house. There's just so many things that we have not got accomplished in the last few months that we got accomplished. So
I guess
it felt pretty good.
You're approaching about a year in the house.
Yeah,
so
about a year.
Crossing off everything. Off that, yeah, we were just super relaxed, chill. I mean, when training camp kind of ramps up for the Colts here in a couple weeks, it's like that's when it's like, all right.
Well, it all ends. Yeah.
Any sort of extended weekends are probably done. So I try to fully embrace the holiday weekend that is July 4th. So certainly did that, Mark. Sounded like you guys stood in long lines down in northern Kentucky.
Yeah, we did we capped off the long weekend with Kentucky Kingdom yesterday and stuff. So that was fun. All day in the sun, on the rides, and in the water park. So that was a good time. Otherwise, just took in the firework displays at Brownsburg. I swear to God, our neighbors across the street from us had to spend like $5,000 on fireworks because they were lighting those suckers off for 2 days.
Are fireworks expensive?
Oh, yeah. Fireworks are expensive, yeah.
Yeah. We didn't mind. We're like, hey, we didn't pay for it, and they're not right next to us, so have at it. The girls like seeing that and everything, but just hung out, and you got a little spoiled with the long weekend. We were like, wow, we got a lot done. You're like, oh, wait, now it's a full work week again. So we got to get back to the grind again. So.
Now, I must say, as I was getting under the covers last night, I heard a few lingering ones here on July 7th.
Oh,
Are we done, or do you think we're going to continue to get some?
I think
feel
we're
like there's
done.
a 2 week. I feel like there's like a 2 week more.
2 week?
2 weeks?
Oh yeah, I've heard them.
You're telling me on July 13th I'm going to be hearing them?
Yeah. Probably.
When someone quits a job, they put in their 2 weeks. We're doing that with fireworks? Good God. For my oldest dog, let's hope not.
When's the drop dead date come where people stop posting on Nextdoor? Was that gunshots or was that fireworks?
Oh, that never ends. That's every weekend.
I was about to say, that happened probably last night in my area. I don't know. It was a fun weekend, though. No, it was a good weekend. And then you know what this week is? Tuesday, Wednesday. This is like now maybe not as much in Indy, but this week, and it's terrible because people probably, lose their homes, but we have a tropical storm hitting the United States.
Yeah, it looks awful. Down right in the
Texas
Houston,
area.
Yeah, Houston
I guess it could
area.
hit here later Tuesday into Wednesday, but this is like the meteorologist Super Bowl, is it not? I saw a meme that you leave Jim Cantor. Is it Jim Cantor, right?
Cantori?
Cantori.
You leave him cookies and milk. It's his week.
I totally forgot Cantori was at IMS that Friday of Carb Day.
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
Yes, he was.
We had Chuck Lofton accurately predict how Sunday would unfold there, and Jim Cantori was in the house.
It's
there.
probably the angriest I've been at a weather person was the day before. It was Carb Day, right? Was Carb Day for the Indy 500.
Nothing against Chuck. I think he was the most hated guest.
Oh, no, he was 100% right. I'm like, when's the last time one of you guys, men or women, have been 100% right about your forecast? Come on.
I must say this. Of all July 4th traditions that the Bowen household usually operates under, we did not consume Nathan's. We did not do the Coney Island action.
Was that a
Really?
protest?
We did not
protest?
watch. I mean, to me, it's like, watching a major without Tiger in his prime.
Well, listen, I don't disagree. I didn't watch second.
Can you name the winner?
I cannot.
Mark?
Nope.
Didn't
I know
watch a
it's
second
for
of
a
it.
second place finish. That's all I know. Because he completed 58 or whatever it was in that amount of spine, and then
But he didn't eat all the buns, right? Wasn't there controversy?
No,
I thought
did he not?
I thought there was
no.
controversy. Like he left some bun particles behind.
Left some bun particles behind. Nothing like that to start your.
Oh, we crushed
Welcome back
Nathan's
to the
over
week.
the weekend, but did not watch
Badlands
a
Booker,
second.
did you guys see that? Chugged a gallon of lemonade
saw
in
that.
21 seconds.
I did.
that
see
one
that.
always hurts my chest. I feel like
What do you think you would recover from that?
from the amount of lemons or the amount of sugar.
Well, I mean, both. I mean, I feel like that is literally a week to get your body back to normal.
Has anyone in Indianapolis ever done a hot dog eating contest? Like have the Indy Indians, have they ever had it, media guys out or anything to do that?
Yeah, I think the big thing is the shrimp eating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've done that before.
You guys have not done that, but
No, we have done that.
Oh, you
Kevin
guys
and I-
have done that?
Kevin and I did that before the Colts Raiders game a couple of years ago.
KB's mic broke. Don't worry, that happened on
Yeah,
a
that
Wednesday.
happened on me on Friday.
This thing is
I'll
so
help you out.
wobbly.
Although I don't know exactly. I've
The
never
screw
seen
came out.
I've never seen it break from that spot before.
I was going to say,
Pull
I
the
don't
screw
think.
out.
I'm used to breaking it down here.
Yeah,
and not over there. I got
take a break.
bun particles to fix during the break.
You do. Hey, quickly, we're about a week and a half away from the Fan on the Back 9, our golf tournament. It's all presented by Franciscan Health. It's coming up Thursday, July 18th. Again, Back 9 Golf and Entertainment. An afternoon of golf, beer, more food. We'll have a good time. Tournament-style games as well. Jake and Jimmy will broadcast live from there. JMV will broadcast live from there. There'll be a silent auction. It will go to help the Franciscan Health Foundation and much more. It's all going to begin registration at 11 a.m. It'll all kick off at noon. For more information on this event or for tickets, check us out online today, 1075thefan.com. The sights and sounds of the weekend. We'll do that next. Your morning check down coming up on this Monday. It's the Wake Up Call on 93.5, 1075 The Fan.
No better way than to cure a little holiday hangover weekend than Rick Carlisle joining us coming up at 8 a.m. So looking forward to talking to the Pacers head coach. Big day for the franchise, and we'll chat with him for the first time in about a month and a half. So looking forward to that at 8 o'clock as we lead off a morning check down.
Yeah, again, 11 o'clock this morning, right, is when you'll have the Pascal Siakam introduction as he'll sign his max deal and be here for the next several years. So cannot wait to talk with Carlisle coming up here at the top of the hour. Let's start Major League Baseball, KB. Were you excited last night? Ellie De La Cruz gets the
Rocking
nod.
the shirt right here, baby.
There you go. I had no idea they were announcing the the MLB All-Star Game last night. I had no idea. You know what was funny to me? And I even forget the young man's name. The St. Louis Cardinals have fallen so hard. They just have a relief pitcher. He's just the only St. Louis Cardinal that made it. The little relief pitcher. How about that? That made me happy.
I saw a stat that was kind of wild. If you look at the starters in the AL and the NL, there's only 5 teams that represent the entire starting lineup.
Oh, is there really? That's not surprising. The Phillies had, 7 guys?
Right.
Wow.
It's super top
Good
heavy.
for them.
Phillies, Diamondbacks, Dodgers, Brewers, and Padres
Yeah,
in the NL. How about Paul Skeens?
I did see that. Paul Skeens, the first ever pick to go first overall, then the very next year, make the All-Star game. Him and his beautiful mustache will be there as well. Does anyone have any idea where the All-Star game is this year? Where is it?
It is Rangers.
It's in Texas.
Uh-huh.
That new ugly stadium they have. You've seen the stadium, right, from the outside?
Yeah.
They got crushed for looking ugly.
And we've stopped doing the home field, right? Up for grabs.
Yes.
That's long been away.
Yeah, finally.
God.
So just quickly, some scores last night. 8-3 Cardinals over Washington. Reds lost at home 5-1 to Detroit there. And your Cubbies marked 5-0 over the Angels. There
Finally.
you go. You good with that?
Sure. I'll
Nice
take wins
little
over
win.
losses any day.
You'll take it any time. Sunday Night Baseball, Red Sox over the Yankees. 3-0.
Did consume a little Mid-Ohio action yesterday as we go in reverse order from the weekend. Pato Ward. I thought Pato very candid per usual afterwards, calling it a proper win. Obviously, he benefited from the Joseph Newgarden and Team Penske cheating back at St. Petersburg to start the year. But this, I guess, his first real win in over a year. Really, him and Alex Palou were in a class by themselves throughout yesterday's race. Palou had the lead for the vast majority of it, but Pato Ward got it done there. We actually listened to it on the radio, and shout out to Ben Davis's own DeJuan Jones, the big ol' offensive tackle for the Cleveland Browns. Played at Ohio State. He did the command to start your engines.
Oh, did he?
Boy, when that came through on the old radio,
Was he
I thought
good?
speakers were going to blow. Yeah, I mean, you know, sometimes you can kind of get a little, they just kind of lack the full energy that's needed in
Not
that
him.
moment. Tremendous from DeJuan Jones in that one. So congrats to Pato Ward as he gets it done at Mid-Ohio there, holding off Alex Palou over the final. Probably about a dozen or so left.
I thought you were going to give a big shout out to Jake Query. That's where I thought you were going with
Jake
that.
was outstanding, as usual. Yes, he was in the keyhole yesterday. That is the
was he?
part of the track where Jake Query was calling the race. So great work by Mark James and company on that. Very uncharacteristic day for Scott Dixon, having issues, frankly, even starting the race, and Joseph Newgarden as well. So kind of wild day from the front runners, if you will.
Dixon had the issue with the new engine, right? The hybrid engine.
So did Chip blame the hybrid?
I think so. I think a couple of the guys did blame the hybrid engine.
No, it looked like only one person had the big issue.
Well,
that would be
yeah.
Dixon on that end.
And I did love the fact that
Or
it was
Dixon's team, I
presented
guess.
by Honda and a Chevy won the race.
Kevin got a call from Rick Carlisle last night. I got a call from Jake telling me how good a time he made back from Mid-Ohio. He was telling me what time he
So
left.
he just called you to tell you how
He's like,
good
well,
of time he made?
he was calling.
That is probably the most Jake Query thing in the world.
He's like, I made great time from Mid-Ohio. I made it to a concert at 7. I'm like,
Well, that is
that
pretty
is
good.
impressive. That's well done by you.
What concert was it?
I have no idea.
Mark's here getting the girls down to bed. He's got to feel
was like, actually,
Jake's
we're on the way-
call about a 2-hour time he
Yeah.
got home.
We're driving back from Kentucky. What the hell are you doing down there? I'm like, well, come back from Kentucky Kingdom. Oh, okay. I made great time from Mid-Ohio.
That was
I'm
what I
like,
was saying,
thank
an
you.
hour and 40 minutes.
Good to know.
Doubleheader in Iowa for IndyCar coming up this weekend.
Quickly, Summer League, Khalil Ware, he was pretty good, man. 26 and 11, had 3 assists, had a couple blocks as well as the Heat won 102-86. You mentioned, I think Wednesday night, you mentioned before the show, maybe in segment number 1, that's when the Pacers will leave and they'll have their first game on Friday. And then you don't have to give me a swoosh for this. We could talk about this later. I'm all jacked up for Team USA.
Yeah,
as
same.
they started their practice over the last couple days or so. They play Team Canada on the 10th, which would be Wednesday. Wednesday night they play Team Canada. So that was there. And then did you see Alvarado and Team Puerto Rico
qualifying?
Did you
yeah.
happen to see that scene?
I saw the scene there.
It looked
saw
awesome.
The emotion from Giannis on the bench with Team Greece qualifying as well. I'm a sucker for the Olympics, and I'm a big sucker to watch, especially these athletes that, again, are here in the NBA getting celebrated so much, and then you watch what it means for them to play for their respective Olympic countries. In Puerto Rico's case, I mean, they beat Domantas Sabonis and Lithuania to get in. Spain qualified yesterday. They beat the DeAndre Ayton, Buddy Hield, Eric Gordon, Bahamas team. So we are set with the Olympics. I can't wait. Again, about 3 weeks away from it starting. But as Andy said, Team USA taking on Team Canada, an exhibition game coming up on Wednesday. And we'll get to that at some point this week. See, a few lineups have already kind of crept out of what it could look like for Tyrese Halliburton and his role out there. So we'll hit on that. And we should mention, going back to Saturday, of course, the best one of the season for the Indiana Fever, 83-78 from the Liberty. On multiple ends of it, they took punches throughout. Obviously, they delivered the first punch with a great start, but then the Liberty, had leads, I felt like, of a 7, 8, 9. And you're like, all right, this is going to be one of those kind of feel-good, competitive losses.
Right.
But they were able to make the plays down the stretch there and defensively, allowing just 16 points in the fourth quarter. Obviously stood out. And Caitlin Clark, what an afternoon for her. First triple-double for a WNBA rookie in the history of that league. Fittingly, game 22 of the season for jersey number 22. She does that. 19 points, 13 assists, 12 rebounds. But as I said in our opening segment, just 4 turnovers. It's the fewest for her in a month. That's probably the thing that stands out to me even almost more than that triple-double. So big win for the Fever. We will be out there Wednesday morning. It is a noon tip with the Washington Mystics. And we hope to have, I would say, a special Fever guest joining us on Wednesday.
Yeah, just quickly, last thing on the Fever. This might be the first time all season I've seen this, where right now the Fever and Chicago, that means Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese, would both be in the playoffs if the playoffs started today. Because usually it's been back and forth.
It's a 7-8 right now.
Yeah, it's a 7-8. Indiana actually would be the 7. Chicago would be the 8. Atlanta's been terrible. Atlanta's been 2-8 their last 10.
Well, again, Mystics
lost 4 in a row.
4 games left until the Olympic break. I think important to, more than hold serve in these. And then, if you can sniff 500 heading into the break, you feel much, much better about yourself. So, again, a lot of Fever action coming up for us on Wednesday morning.
Yeah, what do you want to hear from Rick Carlisle? He's coming up at 8 o'clock. We'll discuss that. Plus, coming up in about an hour, our Colts question of the day. And I got to be honest, it's a doozy. It's not going to be an easy answer. So we'll do that. Carlisle in 30 minutes. And your conversation. We'll do it next year on this Monday. Wake up call 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
About a little summer chat with Rick Carlisle. We'll do that in about 25 minutes. Big day for the Pacers. Pascal Siakam, I guess a reintroduction press conference, if you will, coming up at 11 a.m. With his re-signing. And then later this week, Rick Carlisle and the Pacers off to Vegas to watch some Summer League action, watch a little Team USA and Team Canada. You think Rick Carlisle's a Vegas guy?
He doesn't come across as being a Vegas guy at this point in his life. I got to be honest.
See him at
Would you agree?
4:30 a.m. on the tables.
Man, I hit that
big old roulette crowd around him.
I hit that casino again on Saturday. You know I did. I get on these little spurts where I yearn for the casino.
Now
I can hear it calling my name. It's a dangerous thing.
And this is Shelbyville action for you.
Yes, it
so
is.
You're not there just for the ponies?
No, not just the ponies. No, I don't gamble on horses very often. That is a straight loss, KB, because I don't know. I don't know the sires and how they grew up and the jockey and everything else.
Yeah, reading one of those books is very intimidating.
It's not easy. No, it's a lot of nonsense.
And you need like a magnifying glass as well to look at some of the numbers.
Well, plus, I was there with a couple guys, and they knew some other guys that were there, and it was like race 3, KB, and we'll move on to other things that people care about. And this is one of my pet peeves, and you always see it with horse racing betting guy. Okay, so it's like 5 or 6 of us at a table. And race goes off, and the majority of us lose. But there's a guy at the table who's fist pumping and everything else. He's like, "Oh, I had that one." Like, you can't tell the rest of us when you have a bet. You knew horse 1 was going to win, but you don't think to tell your friends or buddies or acquaintances that are at the table, like, hey, I know the upbringing of this horse in race 3 is, the one horse. I love the spot here. I love the speed. I love how he's going to break from the gate. I don't get any of that. I just pick a loser, and you sit here silent while you have the winning ticket. That happens at that point, I was done. At that point, I'm like, I'm going to the casino for an hour. I'll be back.
Yeah, that's not good juju.
No,
or that's
it's not good friendship.
No, it's not at all. No, I don't want to hang out.
There's like a man code to that, right?
Yeah,
like, hey,
I would agree.
Hey, horse 2 here in race 9. I know the connections are ready to roll. They're ready to win the races. Like, great. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But come on, help a brother out a little bit.
Definition of selfishness, right there.
You're damn right.
Again, Rick Carlisle going to join us coming up here at 8. I don't know if how prevalent the conversation will be. I don't think it will be super prevalent around the one signing that they did make last week outside of the building. But I did want to share some thoughts on it. I know you guys probably talked about it on Wednesday. James Wiseman.
Oh, yeah.
Joining the Pacers. And I remember prior to the draft, I was like, it's not a huge deal, but like, who's the third center? That is something that I feel like was a Pacers roster question as we entered the offseason. I've said this many times about the Colts. Such a fan of kicking the tires on former first-round picks. You just, might as well. As long as the risk isn't too immense, who cares? They might end up like an Eric Ebron for a year or a Xavier Rhodes for a year. It's not necessarily maybe going to be the fruit of super long-term success, but, if you can find a short-term benefit from it, why not? And with Wiseman, I have zero issue with it whatsoever. Frankly, I think it's too big of an extreme to even call it low risk, potential high reward. I don't think there's any risk. Tony East came out with the contract numbers yesterday. It is a minimum 1-year deal with a second-year team option.
Yeah, it was like $500,000, whatever it is.
Like,
yeah.
If you make like the baseball analogy here, you're taking a swing on a 3-0 pitch. It's not even 3-1. It's certainly not 3-2. So I have zero issue. I am somewhat intrigued by it. I fully understand consistent minutes or a consistent role for Wiseman. Frankly, should not be there right away. He's going to have to earn it big time. And whether it was in Golden State or Detroit, two very different situations, he definitely did not earn that. And, yes, I'm skeptical of a guy needing a third wake-up call to maybe necessarily hear that. But, Andy, as we let off the show with, today's the most snoozed alarm day in the history of this entire year. Maybe James Wiseman just needed the third wake-up call. So I'm totally good with it. Yeah, why not take a try on it? Again, there is no risk. Obviously you had the big injury with Golden State. Golden State was certainly win now. It's a little bit more puzzling to me that it didn't work out in Detroit. Some might counter and say, what does work out in Detroit? That's probably a fair statement. So I am more than okay with the Pacers taking, again, I don't even call it a swing on James Wiseman.
Yeah, it's funny, Mark. I don't know if you remember how we talked about this on Wednesday. I talked about James Wiseman. I remember him. Do you remember the story at all when he was a recruit back in the day? Penny Hardaway was his high school coach, and then Penny Hardaway became the Memphis coach, and then all the impermissible gifts kept going to James Wiseman, and they got 7 violations, 4 level 1 violations on the James Wiseman recruitment. Did Penny Hardaway in Memphis and company, because he was going to go and play for John Calipari and Kentucky. I mean, he was going to. He was locked in. Cal threw a fit about it, but Penny ended up getting him. And then remember they played him remember Memphis said, come sanction us. Do you guys remember any of this? What now, 5 years ago?
Yeah,
so
vaguely.
He played just, I don't know, Mark, maybe you can look it up on the fly. He only played a handful of games at Memphis. It was just a few games, KB, that he played at Memphis. And I remember specifically the NCAA was like, basically he was suspended. Don't play James Wiseman. He'll be an ineligible player. Penny Hardaway in Memphis, they got an injunction, if I'm not mistaken, from a local judge there, and they ended up playing him. And I remember at the time loving it because everyone was like, at least they stood up to the NCAA, and they're going to play their guy. Now, they all got in trouble and everything, but not too much trouble because obviously they all still have jobs there. But that's
3 games in Memphis.
Was it just 3 games? Yeah. I was going to say it was 4 or 5. So that's what I remember with Wiseman. Wiseman has had...
And that was the COVID draft, right?
Yeah, it was. It was the COVID draft. And, Wiseman has been injured. And quite frankly, Wiseman's been a bust.
Sure,
How I talked about it on Wednesday, this is not Obi Toppin. Obi Toppin may not have been the top 10 pick that New York thought they were getting, but he's a guy that you would have in your rotation, right? This is a guy that can knock down threes, super athletic, can get to the rim, can run the floor. James Wiseman has not been that at all. It's not that I'm not intrigued, but, this is a guy in Obi Toppin that got re-signed for $15 million a year. I don't think there's any sort of a resurrection here from James Wiseman other than just staying in the league, quite frankly.
Yeah, and I would say another thing on this end is you're getting into a position right now. You're starting, frankly, to be in it right now this offseason. You're certainly going to be in it next offseason moving forward where, again, a flyer or two like this, it would benefit the team greatly for it to work out.
Sure. Oh, sure.
I mean, if you look at the finances, like next season, the Pacers are running it back. That's the phrase we've used. I don't know, though, if they're running it back for multiple seasons necessarily. Look at the cap space right now. And again, this is probably a better question for next time we chat with a guy like Tony East. But if you look at how tight things are right now, imagine fitting another Miles Turner contract into that. Imagine fitting a TJ McConnell contract extension into that. Imagine fitting an Andrew Nembhard contract extension. Can you do all 3 of them? Can you do one? Can you do 2?
Yeah, I don't think you can do all 3 now.
Right. So, I mean, this is where, it's kind of odd to say, but, for this running back, it's almost like the chips are kind of in the middle of the table because it's going to be difficult to, I think, sustain this group for multiple seasons unless you're really going to be paying into the tax. So, that's where, again, a guy like Wiseman, it'd be beyond, premature to act like he could take over as a starting center. But you know what? Why not? And to me, this has 0 risk whatsoever for it. Will a third wake-up call do him any service? Will the fact that he's a little bit healthy? I mean, he's been in 2, I would say, weird spots. Second-round picks don't get drafted to dynasties. He did in Golden State. And then he had a big injury, okay? Maybe you give him an excuse for that. Well, then he goes to the opposite end of the league.
Right.
He goes to dysfunction.
The Pistons. Yeah.
And that's Detroit. Okay, now you bring him into a healthy, stable, limestone foundation organization in the Pacers who have had resurrection projects. Now, to your point, you are spot on. He does not have Obi Toppin on the resume. Frankly, he doesn't have a Jalen Smith with the Suns. Or, I don't know. I'd probably have to look a little closer at Aaron Nesmith's Boston career, but I don't even think he's got that necessarily on there. But, does the fact that, to your point, if he doesn't work out here, he might not get another chance in the league. It's Beijing Sharks or Shanghai Sharks for him moving forward. What does that do? So totally fine with it. I know it's not sexy, and I know the Pacers have really had a very quiet offseason, of course, away from their own building. But, yeah, totally good with it.
I think the thing the Pacers do, so I think when you watch the Pacers, the thing that they are elite at, and Halliburton's a huge part of this, is they get guys shots and they get guys good shots, right? And so James Wiseman, I don't know if he'll be, much of a scorer. I don't know if he'll play very much. I don't know if he'll be more of a defensive guy. I have no idea exactly what kind of role they think, if much at all, quite frankly, that Wiseman will have. But in this offense, you're going to get the ball in a spot that's advantageous to score. That's the one thing I know in this offense. And, Jalen Smith, he fell into that. He got himself some more money because of it. Obi Toppin has 100 threes and 100 dunks this past season. Why? Because you're in transition. There's the dunk. You're in transition. You can hit the three. Halliburton and Nembhard and company can get you the ball where you can shoot that three. And so, whatever James Wiseman has left in the tank, and I don't know if it's very much, the chance to get to showcase that, this is a pretty good team offensively to be able to do that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, frankly, if he can't get it done here,
well, you're not going to do
it. He
it.
ain't getting done anywhere. Rick Carlisle going to join us here in less than 15 minutes. He mentioned they're going to be out in Vegas coming up this week, and USA-Canada. It's the first exhibition game for Team USA. Obviously, Pacers-wise, that's Tyrese Halliburton and Andrew Nembhard squaring off. Now, that's 2 Olympians for the Pacers. Did I see they've added a third?
Help me here. I think you did, yes. I think you're right on this.
Halliburton, USA.
Right.
Nembhard, Canada.
Right. And we know Mathurin is following Team Canada.
Sure,
He's not
Mathurin
playing, but he's there.
Not on
right.
it, but yeah. Did you see the third?
I did see the third, but I'm blanking on who this is. I know the Fever added one last night. Go ahead.
Now, is this the man that got Mike Woodson ejected in the final game of the season?
It might have been.
Is this the Japanese Buddy Hield?
It might have been.
Is this the man that points to the heavens after every three-pointer he made in the Big Ten?
Can we ask Rick Carlisle about him?
I don't know if that's going to be top of mind for me, but Keisei Tominaga.
Oh, I'm so ready. I
think he was just a Big Ten killer. It felt like he was really an IU killer. I mean, Purdue, he definitely had notable games. I felt like he really had the big games against IU. Keisei Tominaga, and now again, this falls into the categories of we need a one-sheeter on NBA contracts to help explain it. I've done a little bit of research. The Pacers have signed him to an Exhibit 10 deal.
Right.
I believe in simplest terms, think of it like a non-guaranteed sort of training camp deal. You're likely going to be a Mad Ant.
That sounds about right.
So that's what we're looking at from the one and only Keisei Tominaga.
Well, this is our guy. We love this guy.
This is our guy. I thought I was seeing things when I
really did
saw
too.
This.
Well, you know what I always think of? I'm
it.
like, were the Pacers listening to the show? That's what I was thinking. Did they just pick him up because they
us
knew
a lot of credit.
Because
to be
they
fair, they did work him out last draft cycle, so they do have a little bit of familiarity with him. Obviously, Keisei is with Team Japan right now and trying to make their Olympic team as they will be in the Paris Games coming up here in a few weeks. So we could have a third Olympian for the Pacers.
This guy's great, man. Okay, Big Ten tournament. He had 23-5 against Mike Woodson and company.
And that's when Woodson got tossed, right?
Yeah, that's where Woodson got tossed, and he didn't want to sit there the final 3 minutes. The game in February, he had 20, and then the first game, everyone will remember that. That was at Assembly Hall. Remember, he went nuts, and he had 4 or 5 threes in the first half. He had 28 points in that game.
Gosh, he was such
this
an
is
IU
This
killer.
is so our guy, man.
Yeah.
It really is.
Keisei Tominaga. Exhibit 10 deal. I don't even believe that's a two-way contract. So, I don't know. Fans of the Noblesville Mad Ants or whatever they're going to be called here eventually, you could check him out this year.
Oh, they changing names?
Well, I mean, they're changing cities. I don't know if are they keeping the Mad Ants?
I don't know. How do you come up with the Mad Ants as your name,
Again,
by the way?
questions we probably will not ask for Carlisle here. Coming up
Dude,
in about 10 minutes.
every one of his games is just a stud game.
Well, do you
he only
have
had
Purdue?
a couple.
What do you? I remember. He was notable against Purdue, but I felt like he had the big ones against IU.
He was 19. He had 19 against Purdue, so that's not bad. It's Purdue. It's not bad.
Rick Carlisle going to join us here in about 10. I am looking forward. We'll get into our Colts question of the day coming up at 8:30. We've talked about these individuals, I think, before on again kind of separate cases, but you go back 2 drafts ago and. I guess kind of James Wiseman falls into this boat a little bit. For Wiseman, it's a third chance. When it comes to the NFL guys, when you're not a first-round pick, it's like, all right, year 3 is put up or shut up time. And if you look back a couple drafts ago, Bernard Ryman, I think, has been an absolute hit. Huge draft pick at a position of need by Chris Ballard and company. Worked out very well. If you look at the picks around Ryman in that draft, Andy, for the Colts, it was Alec Pierce in round 2. It was Jelani Woods as a fellow third-rounder, and it was Nick Cross, who they traded back into round 3 for. And you look at those three, Pierce, Cross, Woods, just massive year 3s on the horizon for them. And I think each of them have kind of had different paths to this third year. And the question that I would have for you, and we'll do this coming up here in a bit, is who do you have the most confidence in hitting here in year 3?
Yeah, good luck answering this.
Because all three of them,
I mean, good luck.
Again, have been heavily scrutinized given the position they've been drafted. I think all three of them are going to be asked for some different roles potentially with their position groups here in 2024. But who would you feel the most confident in hitting? And then I think, therefore, one day down the road, getting that second contract.
Yeah, we'll ask that question at 8:30. I've already ruled out one, so I'm now down to 2 names on this. I won't tell you who that is. Would it be fair to say they need one of these guys to hit and then one of these guys to at least be an average player at his position? I mean, obviously, you would want all 3 to hit, and you would want, Nick Cross to be out there balling out on defense and Jelani Woods to be your hybrid starting tight end and have him emerge from that room to where there's 5 guys playing that position and Alec Pierce to become the guy you drafted in the second round. But the reality is that all of this is not going to happen, right? I mean, so I'm looking at it, and I look at it and I say, with these guys right now, can I get one to hit, one to be average, and then one's probably going to fall by the wayside? That's kind of the nature of the NFL draft.
I think another question off of that, who's the most important? I think you can make the argument it's Nick Cross.
I think it's Nick Cross, don't you, just because of his position?
There's just not a lot. And again, I've said this a lot about safety here. There are short-term and long-term questions. Julian Blackmon just, re-signed on a 1-year deal. I mean, if Blackmon has another career season and is healthy, that man should go chase the bag. I mean, he's battled injuries throughout his career, and, he obviously wasn't happy with the safety market this offseason. He should go chase it. So I don't think it's a lock, slam dunk that he would be back. So obviously they all are important to some degree, but I think it's an interesting little case study you can make for each of those 3.
Alex hits us up on Twitter and says, if Wiseman comes in and works and stays healthy, he's better than Isaiah Jackson. I'm not ready for that yet. I probably would have said yes until this year. I thought Isaiah Jackson kind of played his ass off at times.
Well,
I would put now it's not a huge lead, but I would put Jackson ahead of him right now.
If I could edit Alex's tweet a little bit, if Wiseman comes in and actually produces, not works, actually produce. I mean, the guy hasn't
done anything.
I mean, what's it, 7-5, and is that's what he averaged with the worst team in the NBA. I think Jackson deserves a little bit more benefit of the doubt, but obviously there's potential in there. And again, what is a third wake-up call? I don't think Isaiah Jackson has entrenched or cemented himself as by all means he is. I mean, hell, he wasn't even the backup before the start of the playoffs.
He's going to get an opportunity this season to grow his spot in the league.
Yeah,
that's what he's going to get.
But again, to me, more than any of it, it's just so low risk. There's no risk at all. Kick the tires on it, see what happens, and if not, it was fun while it lasted, to steal a Rick Carlisle phrase.
Yeah, so we'll find out what happens. Speaking of a Rick Carlisle phrase, I'm sure we'll get a couple. Coming up after the break, Rick Carlisle, Pacers head coach, joins us. He'll do it next. Thanks for waking up with us on this Monday. Wake Up Call, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
Great Monday here on The Fan. I know it's quite the wake-up call to return from the holiday weekend, but Dwight Freeney in studio with Jake and Jimmy coming up at noon. And how about we go back to our weekly conversations throughout the course of the Pacers season. It's been about a month and a half since we chatted with our next guest, but it is not only a marquee day for the Pacers today, but a busy week as they head out to Vegas for Summer League and check out a few of their Olympians as well. He is the head coach of the Indiana Pacers. Rick Carlisle joins us. Coach, good morning. How has the summer vacation been so far for you?
It's been good. It's been good. It's different when your off season begins at the end of May or the beginning of June. You know, it's the summer's upon you very, very quickly, but everything's good. You know, it was certainly an upbeat season, and we've got a big day today with the signing of Pascal. And I think originally there was going to also be a press conference for Obi Toppin, but he's in L.A., so I think his availability to the press is going to happen this coming week in Vegas. But those two signings are obviously very, very important to us. Pascal's is really historic if you think about signing this level of free agent for this franchise, and Obi's right there with him. Obi's a restricted free agent, so his situation is a little bit different. But the Pascal being an unrestricted free agent, and the magnitude of the kind of player he is and how he played for us, and him, choosing to come back is a big deal.
Coach, thanks for joining us this morning. I remember right after the season, you said, hey, the first thing that is on my list is recruiting Pascal Siakam and making sure he's back. And we know the marriage between, the franchise and Siakam have been pretty damn good here over the last few months. Can you give us what your part of that pitch was when you had those conversations with Siakam? What did you tell him on why he would want to come back and continue to be an Indiana Pacer?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is just to, simply acknowledge that, you've got to recruit this guy. And as I mentioned to you guys back then, whenever it was 5-6 weeks ago, we had this in Dallas where Dirk Nowitzki would become a free agent, and everybody would just assume because Dirk was such a great guy and he had such a close relationship with Mark in the city that, he would sign back, and no one would look to poach him or anything like that. And you got to be careful about that stuff because guys have choices and they have options. And we're talking about, in Dirk's case, one of the great players of all time. LeBron James was in Miami for 4 years and then he left. And then, it's just, so you just don't know. So that was the reasoning for that. And then, there have been conversations in the interim. Took a trip down to his home in Orlando to talk to him about, the situation. We had a great meeting with him and his agent, Todd Ramasar, in Orlando. It was me, KP, Chad, and Lloyd Pierce went down there. And during the meeting, we learned even more about Pascal, just in a quiet setting, in a restaurant, room with the door closed. And, we just wanted to hear more about who he was, even though he was here for, 4 or 5 months or whatever it was. It's still just a beginning. And so, coming away from that meeting, we were all even more convinced that this guy was really special. And, Kevin was able to get the deal done, and today we celebrated.
Rick Carlisle with us here on the Payless Liquors Hotline. Just as a follow-up to that, Coach, I don't think I've ever asked you this. It seemed like when he came over here, the marriage was immediately a great blossoming marriage. He said such great things about you and the organization, and you guys in return said great things about him, and then the play on the court was good as well. Did you know when you were trading for him that this marriage was going to be this good? Is there any way you can know, Coach, before you go make a big substantial move like that in the middle of a season?
Well, you have a lot of resources that point you in the direction of something that you think is going to work. And certainly there were a lot of metrics that made sense with Pascal. But if you recall, when we first got him, he played well, but we were in a tough part of the season, and we weren't winning an awful lot. And Tyrese was in the process of coming back, and then kind of hit the reset button on coming back. And so, we had some struggles, but looking back on it, had we not had Pascal, we could have gone into the abyss.
Sure.
Because there were a lot of tough games that we were able to win. But just simply by virtue of having him, when Tyrese was either just back on the court, or we were waiting for him to be back on the court again. So he was super important to us as things went along. He really got his comfort level with what him as a leader and as a voice on the team was going to look and sound like, and it just organically happened. And in the playoffs, he's the guy that had the most experience of anybody in our room, so all those things were very important. And he had some amazing moments. You look at the Milwaukee series. Game 2 at Milwaukee was the pivotal game that put us back that gave home court to us. And then in the Knicks series, he and Tyrese were both spectacular in Game 7. And so without what he did in Game 7, we certainly don't beat the Knicks. So big day, and once again, I can't stress it enough. The word historic is not an overblown word here.
Yeah, it'll be the Pascal Siakam re-signing press conference coming up later this morning here. Rick Carlisle, Summer Chat with the Pacers head coach here on the Payless Liquors hotline. Coach, I think when we talked to you at the end of the season, you kind of anticipated, probably not a ton of activity this offseason for you guys. Obviously, the Siakam goal accomplished. Obi Toppin is back. Draft, you guys didn't get into round 1, made those 3 selections. Is this kind of how you envision the offseason going of, for the most part, it is largely running it back and relying on the internal growth?
Yeah, and there was, we weren't sure what was going to happen with Jalen Smith. He had a player option, and, he's played extremely well here. Injury interrupted the kind of year he was having. Like halfway through the season, he was having a historic 3-point shooting year and playing at a super high level. And then he got banged up for a while, and it just was hard for him to get back to that. And so, we got into the playoffs with Milwaukee and decided to play smaller against Milwaukee so that we could get Obi on the floor more, and he played some small ball 5. And then, Jalen fell out of it a little bit, but a lot of it really had to do with the injury situations that happened during the year. When we did go to playing an additional center other than Miles, Isaiah was getting the minutes. And ultimately, Jalen decided to opt out, and he got a great deal with Chicago. So, it's tough losing a guy like Jalen Smith on the one hand, but on the other hand, he came here in a trade. Our situation really resurrected his career. He was a starting 4 for us, and then he was the backup 5. And then if you recall last Christmas when we made a real recommitment to defense, he became the starting 4 again because we needed length and rebounding, and he was one of our best rebounders at the time. So, the fact that he comes here for 2 years, has his level of play really skyrocketed during parts of it, and then is able to get a 3-year, $27 million deal. That's great for him, and it's also great for us.
What have been your conversations this offseason, whether it's directly related to Vegas upcoming or in regards to going into year 2? What have your conversations with Jarris Walker been about here again as he enters summer league and then, of course, his second NBA season?
Hard play, and I think it's something that is so important to get across to young players. He came into this season with expectations, and we had some really honest conversations with him during the year, but we had even more of them after the season. And I think the expectation was that he was just going to be given an opportunity or granted an opportunity. And as our conversations on this show, on a weekly basis during the year, I use the term earn it a lot. And so when the season was over, we talked to him about getting back in the gym here in Indy, preferably, and getting to work on gaining a level of conditioning that was going to be his best ever. And so he got back in the gym for 3 straight weeks. And Jim Boylan was the guy that worked with him individually. And, not coincidentally, last summer, Jim worked very closely with Isaiah Jackson and Jalen Smith. And, they used the heavy ball, and it was a lot of, rote repetition of just doing hard things at a high level. I mean, it's just difficult. It's kind of like a football training camp, and you can't make the guys do it. I mean, it's their choice. But those two guys, Jalen and Isaiah, both had the best years of their career this year, and so we suggested that Jairus do the same thing with Jim. He did it for 3 weeks, and now he's in training camp for summer league. And here's the truth: positional size is such an important part of defending at a high level in the NBA. And we've put it out there to him that if he can demonstrate that he can play with a high motor, a high level of physicality, that he can rebound and that he can take on a defensive matchup, that he's a guy that can be a factor in our rotation and perhaps even a major factor. But this is not just, words. I mean, this is going to be a lot of work. And so we've had 2 practices. I've been out of town. I've been watching them on film, and I'm back in town today. We have a practice today after the press conference. And, as we talked about during the season, in the playoffs, the 17 playoff games were won almost every single time by the team that was A, more physical, and B, got more rebounds. And so if he can demonstrate that he can have that level of physicality, that he can retrieve the ball, and number 3 is that, he can take a matchup and as Pascal and other guys did, and Aaron Nesmith, and really literally everybody in our team in the playoffs, I mean, we picked up full court, and, to make the game our kind of pace, we picked up full court defensively and had constant pressure on the other team. If he can demonstrate those things, then he's got a chance to play for the Indiana Pacers this year. Now, I haven't even talked at all about his natural gifts that we've seen. He can shoot, he can score, he can handle, he has vision. We all know he played point guard before. He has great feel for the game. But those things don't guarantee anybody anything in this league unless you can bring the level of physicality, the motor, et cetera. So this is a very important summer for him. I'm watching it very closely. We're watching it very closely. He's done his part so far, but we're really at the beginning of this.
Coach, and Rick Carlisle with us here on the Payless Liquors Hotline. I want to follow up on that because obviously so many people are just interested. I know Coach Pargo came out and said, hey, he's going to play the 3 for us in Summer League. We talk about, being a better defensive team, internal growth. No doubt that Walker is a part of that. When you guys have challenged him, whether it's during the season or now after the season, is he a quiet guy? How does he respond to you guys challenging him?
Well, he's a very smart kid, and he's got great tools, and he's from a great family. And so, during the season, it was a little different. I mean, he worked and did all those things, but you get into the NBA season, and the summer is where young players really grow because you can take on a task and you can really attack it. And so this is his time. This is his time to, to gain that level of consistent fight and everything I've been talking about. And I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but this is so much about hard, consistent play. And, a player like him has to simply decide that he is going to, fight his way into the lineup. And so that's what this whole thing is. And look, I don't care how many points he scores this summer. I don't care, how many assists he gets or how many pretty plays he makes. We're looking at what is the motor looking like? Is he, can he consistently hit people? Can he rebound? Will he, can he consistently run? And his conditioning level better than the guys he's played against? And that's where it's at.
And Rick Carlisle with us here, a little summer chat. Big day. Pascal Siakam, that re-signing announcement press conference going to take place later this morning. Off to Vegas here later this week for not only Summer League action, but also watch Tyrese Halliburton and Andrew Nembhard in that matchup coming up Wednesday night for their respective countries. Before we get to that part of it, Coach, I want to go back to something you said at the end of the season with us, and you mentioned, obviously you have Tyrese. The hope was Pascal would return. And you said, maybe internally we need to develop another star player. How do you view that with your current makeup and the guys, some of the young guys that you do have on your roster right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty obvious. It's the two guys are Mathurin and Walker. And I just gave a whole thing on Walker's situation. And Ben Mathurin's deal is similar. And, interestingly, as you looked at our team in the playoffs last year, do you guys know who the number one net rating player was on our team last year in the playoffs?
I guess Nembhard, but I could be very off on that.
No, it was Ben Shepherd. And it was Ben Shepherd really by a pretty good margin. And if you look at the things that Shepherd does, I mean, from a coaching standpoint, he's like one of the most likable players in the history of the game. I mean, he just goes so hard. He only takes open shots. He defends without fouling pretty well. He has length. He has positional size. And, he got his opportunity, and he went in there and filled a role. Now, based on what I'm telling you guys, he starred in that role. So, look, the word star, we got to be careful, right? I mean,
Sure.
These guys view the word star culturally, the young players in the NBA as the guy that gets all the touches, the shots, and the money. I mean, that's how it's viewed. And, we're in the process of developing a different culture here where, we're developing players to be great competitors and to star in their roles. And so, look, Mathurin has great physical ability. He has skill. We know he has a nose to score. He's got to become more of a speed player and more of a quick decision player, and he's got to be able to take on defensive matchups. All right, that's one thing. And then I've just went through the whole thing on Walker and said the same thing. So, our approach with these guys has got to be that we've got to be very demanding about those things, and their level of physical ability, their level of basketball talent gives them a chance to succeed at a high level and help our team grow. But I do not want to confuse the word star with something having to do with a guy that's, a perennial all-star, or, those kind of things. If that stuff happens, great. And that would be the ultimate goal. But these guys have to learn about the competitive aspect of this to have a chance. And they got a guy that really, in the end, was the most effective of any of our young players last year that just does those things. He's a 4-year player at Belmont, and he has the tools that allowed him to do that, and he did it at a great level. And so, hats off to him. And now these guys have got to learn from that, and they've got to jump in.
Pacers head coach Rick Carlisle with us on the Payless Liquors hotline. Again, that introductory press conference, the re-signing of Pascal Siakam coming up in a couple hours at about 11 o'clock. Coach, I want to go back to Tyrese Halliburton because now, there's been a couple Team USA practices and everything, and we're a couple weeks away from the Olympics. And I love so much the Olympics and obviously Team USA basketball. I know you'll get to see it, I think, Wednesday night. I think you'll get to see the scrimmage they have against Canada, but just in general, Tyrese being out there, the experience that he's going to get playing with so many great Hall of Fame players. But, as his coach here on the Pacers, how do you watch Halliburton playing on another team being coached by another bench of coaches? How do you do that? Can you take anything away from any of it?
Yeah, I hope to, certainly. And look, it's such an amazing opportunity for him to be around those guys. Like, he's going to be around LeBron James every day. And I don't know exactly what LeBron James does to keep his body that strong and everything. But I tell you what, if I'm a guy like Tyrese, I'm watching very closely, to see his training regimen. And I've heard it's legendary. I mean, the amount of detail, the amount of time spent, I've just heard it's just out of this world. You got that. You got you're there with Kevin Durant. You're there with all these other guys. I mean, it's the opportunity of a lifetime, and you have an opportunity to earn playing time on that team. And so it's going to be very interesting. I mean, like you look at Canada's team. I mean, Canada's loaded. Canada's loaded with great guard play. They've got Murray. They've got Gilgeous-Alexander. They've got they got Nembhard. And they got Dort, and they got Dylan Brooks. I mean, they got great wing players, growing on trees up there. And their challenge is probably going to be that they don't have a bunch of big guys, but they've got some big guys. Dwight Powell's an experienced international player. Olynyk is, and I think Kem Birch is the other big guy. And Zach Edey was slated to play with them, and I guess he's not going to now, and so that's a big hit for them. But the game Wednesday to me is going to be a fascinating game to watch.
Again, that'll be Wednesday, 10:30, as Team USA gets their scrimmages going before Paris, and Team Canada, of course, as well. Coach, we can't thank you enough. On the Vegas agenda, my wife and I just got back about a month and a half ago. Are you a Vegas guy? Do you embrace the lifestyle of Vegas? Don't want to get you into any gambling related questions here, but how's the Vegas lifestyle meet Rick Carlisle?
Well, I'm not a Viva Las Vegas type person, but it's this time of year it's become a happening out there. And the way that they schedule the games in prime time with the big draft picks, et cetera, I mean, and everything, it is, if you're out there, it is a buzz for 2 straight weeks, and it's unlike anything else. And so, a lot going on. I mean, you got the aces out there that they play some home games during that period, and you got a bunch of NBA players sitting courtside. We haven't even talked about the Fever, and they're playing up a storm right now, which is great to see. And so, yeah, it's an exciting time. And as I mentioned to you, we'll be watching Jarris very, very carefully. We didn't even talk about Johnny Furphy. He's a guy that our scouts had as the number 14 player in the entire draft, and we got him at 35. So we feel pretty fortunate there. And so, I'll get to put my eyes on him in person today for the first time. I'm looking forward to that. And, all these games will be on TV, so all our fans can watch. They'll either be on, I believe, ESPN or NBA TV. So it's a great time of the year.
Certainly Friday, the first Summer League game. Coach, can't thank you enough for reaching out, and appreciate you hopping on with us. I know it's a fun day, not only for you, but certainly for Pascal as well. So congrats on that. Safe travels to Vegas, and hopefully we can chat again before we get things started here coming up in a few months.
All right. Take care, guys.
That's the head coach of the Indiana Pacers, Rick Carlisle. I say this quite often.
Pretty good stuff.
Andy, when we wrap up with Rick. Wow.
There's a lot there.
Where do you want to go first? There's like 13 different nuggets that I wanted to get to. Of course, we had teased, hey, Colts question of the day coming up at 8:30. I'm like, we might need to push that a little bit.
We going to talk Alec Pierce next? Is that what you're telling me you want to do?
A little bit later. If I had to put you on the spot, biggest thing that jumped out.
I would say there's two. I would say the little nugget at the end that Johnny Furphy was 14th on their big board, if you will.
Kind of check the NBA's thought, right? In terms of the green room. I mean, he was in the green room.
No
with
kidding.
Bill Self there.
Well, yeah. I mean, everyone thought he was going to go in the first round. So they're very fortunate there. And then he was ready to talk about Jarris Walker. And, I find
so that's an understatement.
Yeah, this offseason we know is vital to Jarris Walker. And it sounds like, KB, that what they want to do with that internal growth, with that next guy that could be a star, boy, it sure sounds like there's a lot riding on Jarris Walker's shoulders with that. He's going to get an opportunity for him to become that. I would say, and I don't know if this is how he meant it, the only thing that worried me a little bit was, we're talking about motor with Jarris Walker. I mean, that's something now I think the more he plays, the more we'll have to watch. He played so very little, so few minutes. A lot of times the game was kind of out of balance when he was in the game. So that's something they have noticed, whether it be with the Mad Ants or whatever, that his conditioning needs to be better, the motor and that sort of thing. So I didn't think of Jarris Walker as a guy maybe that they would say that about. I think the last year for Walker, it's simple, has been a wake-up call from being a top 10 pick to thinking you're going to play that, wait, I'm not going to play very much. I'm going to spend time in the G League and everything else. But I thought obviously the Walker stuff and then having Johnny Furphy all the way at 14th and getting him in the mid-30s is pretty damn good.
Yeah, obviously a lot I would nod my head at that you just pointed to. This staff clearly loves how Ben Shepherd works. It's funny. We're hoping to have Gennaro Pargo, the Summer League coach, on at some point this week, and I was listening to his press conference from over the weekend, and he described Enrique Freeman, who, again, that was the 50th pick out of Akron. You guys had John Gross on and Enrique Freeman.
Yeah, we had both of them on, kind of.
Made an appearance there, and Pargo at one point described Freeman, again, 5-year player at Akron, didn't show up there playing basketball on scholarship, had to be a walk-on during a spot. He described Freeman as a bigger Ben Shepherd. I'm like, boy, that's an interesting compliment. They're not the same type of player by any means. And clearly the staff is a huge fan of how Shepherd plays and how he works. And when I heard Pargo talk about Walker, I tend to hear it a little bit more from a conditioning standpoint than just like an inability to play hard, if that makes sense. Like, he played for Kelvin Sampson at Houston. The dude plays hard. It's just sustaining that.
Mm-hmm.
And, I thought Rick said something that I've kind of harped on with Jarris Walker coming up this weekend in regards to the start of Summer League. I don't really care too much about the points. I don't really care too much about the flashy play. Sure, you want him to be the alpha on that end of the floor because he should be. But, to me, it's a little bit more about, is he doing the dirty work? Is he, making the effort plays? They've got enough. Frankly, it's a little bit of Obi Toppin can do all that. Can you do some of what maybe Obi can't do at that position there, kind of at that 3-4 spot?
By the way, that's a good way to put it. And then just to piggyback that, I think it's interesting that Pargo came out and said over the weekend, I know it's positionless basketball and all that, but he said, hey, he's going to play the 3 for us. And wasn't that the question we had with Obi Toppin was, hey, if Obi is back, does that mean that Jarris is just going to kind of, drift to being a backup 4? And if that's the case, they have guys at that position there. If we're talking about him now as a 3, you can play him and Toppin together, obviously. And, Carlisle, I thought, was pretty upfront there that, hey, I mean, if you do these things that we're trying to get you to do, there's time to be had in this rotation. Potentially, there's a lot of time to be had in this rotation. So, listen, I know some people may say, the guys that kind of got you to the Eastern Conference, let's focus on those guys, and Walker needs to earn it. Well, if Walker earning it, let's put it this way. He's not going to have anything given to him. I mean, how many times can Carlisle say he's got to earn it? I'm sure at the press conference in a couple hours, he's going to be asked about him. He'll say the exact same thing again. If Walker earning it this offseason and early parts of next year, I mean, I just think it's the number one story with the Pacers. I really do.
And I heard a little bit of a genuine, we want him to earn it. There is a.
I would agree with you.
I think they know what's missing from this team, and they feel like it's in Walker. And
I would agree.
And so again, just watching all of that play out, I thought all the Carlisle answers on Walker were fascinating. And I'm sure there are some people out there that are like, "Geez, are they building the Ben Shepherd statue out front?" But, I think they would love to marry some of maybe the gifts that Mathurin and Walker possess, which, again, asked about the internal starter develop. Those are the two he mentions. But also, get some of that Shepherd, full throttle, 90-some feet, et cetera, et cetera. So, outstanding from Rick Carlisle. That'll be up on the podcast. Mark will have that up for you here shortly. We'll re-rack that coming up here to close things out. Rick Carlisle did mention the Fever. We will be out there Wednesday morning for their game. It's an afternoon game. It's a noon tip against the Mystics. Hope to have a special guest joining us on Wednesday.
Are you trying not to jinx it by not saying this individual's name?
Plays out. I'm not a believer in jinxes,
Okay.
but I hate, we have been here before a little bit.
Yeah.
So, I just want to, fingers crossed that hopefully we'll have that for you on Wednesday. So
Under
again,
promise and over deliver.
Sure. Thank you.
Do that.
Thank you.
Although
Yeah.
I feel like at this point we're
That's an
almost
adage of a
promising.
marriage, right? That's a big staple from a marriage standpoint
I
here.
tell that Ashley every day.
Yeah.
Yes. Amen.
I'm
to
a
that.
5-star recruit when it comes to that.
We'll get to our Colts question today at some point, but we got to hit a morning check down. Andy, go ahead and lead us off.
The Morning Checkdown, brought to you by Butler Bulldogs Basketball. Season tickets are on sale now. Order by August 1st for your shot at the best seats in Hinkle Fieldhouse. Visit butlersports.com/buy tickets.
All right, let's start with some baseball. Yesterday in baseball, Cubs winners. How about that? I'm going to start with the Cubs. I don't know why I started with the Cubs, but I did. Cubs winners 5-0 over the Angels. Tigers over the Reds 5-1. Cardinals over the Nationals 8-3 last night before Sunday Night Baseball. Red Sox and Yankees. We had Major League Baseball All-Star Game. Teams announced. The Phillies led everyone with 7 players. I think there's 4 teams. This would have been a good Scotty question for the pop quiz that actually had 8. So the Phillies came in with 7. And then if you're on the YouTube stream, you see KB with the jersey, the Ellie De La Cruz jersey shirt that he has on. He'll be going to the All-Star game. I would imagine Eddie Garrison will be wearing the exact same shirt that you're wearing today.
Yeah,
You and Eddie G.
Better to rock this and talk about
Yeah.
how the Reds played over the last couple of days, although it was nice to take care of the Yankees in that impressive fashion there.
How do you get swept by the Tigers? Come on.
Yeah.
What
I
are we
know.
doing?
Yeah, well, that's why the Reds are the Reds. All right, let's go back to Saturday. Fever, big win. I would say their biggest win of the season. They beat the Liberty inside of Gainbridge Fieldhouse. Caitlin Clark triple-double early in the fourth quarter. She hit that. I guess I just, hand raised. I had no idea that those have been so rare in the WNBA. First ever for a rookie in that 25-year history of the league. First in Fever franchise history as well. So Clark, outstanding. Again, I'd point to her 4 turnovers as that stands out to me. I mean, that is a very small number for how much she's asked to do. It's her lowest number in a month. So just a terrific game from her. They punched back against the best team in the league on several occasions. And again, I know it's not sexy, but it's something Christy Sides will probably appreciate when we chat with her coming up on Wednesday morning. How about 16 points allowed in the fourth quarter? That we should maybe have a parade for in celebrating the Fever getting a big, big W there. So, again, they'll have the Mystics coming up Wednesday at noon. 4 games left until the Olympic break for the Fever.
Kind of just want to talk to Christy Sides about her voice.
Should we bring Halls?
I mean, I think that needs to be a focal point of the conversation, given that we've dedicated so much time analyzing her failing voice at times during the season. So that will be coming up on Wednesday. Pato Award winner there at the Mid-Ohio course.
Mid-America country,
Yeah, I mean,
right?
I think it's pretty good enough.
Close enough.
Took the lead from Alex Palou with 24 laps to go. Did not give it up. Technically a second win of the season. Here's Pato Award after the race.
Oh, this is during.
Pato Award trying to hold on. The final series of turns as cars start to move out of the way. Augustin Canapino slides over. Kiffin Simpson, however, does not. He will stack up Pato Award behind him. The lead down to 4/10 of a second as they come off of the carousel. Is Pato Award going to hold on to it? Indeed he does. A salute to his team as he goes to the inside retaining wall. The Advance Auto Parts twin checkered flag flies, and Pato Award outduels Alex Palou. He got the pole yesterday, but he got the big prize today, talking about Palou and Award.
Thank you to Mark Janes for that. Pato Award afterwards. Proper win is how he phrased it. I think that's in reference to obviously what happened at St. Pete earlier in the year, where he found out he won 6 weeks later, thanks to Push to Pass and Joseph Newgarden and Team Penske, etc. Great, final really 5 to 10 laps, as Mark Janes called it right there. They had reached some lap traffic there, but Pato Award was able to hold off Alex Palou and get that W. Fun doubleheader coming up this weekend. Back on the oval out there at Iowa. That is a nighttime race on Saturday. I think it's an 8 o'clock green flag, then noon Sunday. So it's a busy time of year before they go to Toronto here in the month of July for IndyCar.
I'm interested to see. They're going to have him on. Pato's joining Jake and Jimmy today.
Yes, Dwight Freeney, Pato Award.
Okay, well, I'm interested, Jake, breaking down the new hybrid engine, exactly the goods and the bads and everything else in between.
Like Scott Dixon might have an opinion on that, correct, after
I
yesterday?
think Scott Dixon probably not too happy. Just one other thing I wanted to throw out there. You guys have any opinion on Buddy Hield? 2 for 21 with the Warriors? Is that... I don't think he's washed, but he's also not what he was when you guys were watching him here, 2-3 years ago?
Yeah,
right?
I mean,
Somewhere in between.
If you're the Warriors, it makes sense in terms of, a mini size version of Klay Thompson, just in terms of a shooter. But boy, you want to imagine the money that Buddy Hield thought he was going to get here at one point and where he ended up going. So, I get why Golden State did that, though. And it'll be interesting to see how he shoots the ball with, Draymond setting screens and Steph,
I'm just
still
surprised how Buddy just, he just lost a shot here and then went to Philly and was an afterthought,
he was
right?
Benched there, and then all of a sudden he had a wake-up call one game in the playoffs.
Well, it was the very last game of the season.
Was that what it was?
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't playing at all. It was the elimination game. He had a better game, so 2 for 21. Buddy Hield. DeMar DeRozan obviously gets moved over the weekend as well. We'll continue to react with our conversation with Rick Carlisle. Colts question of the day as well. Halfway through on this Monday. Wake up call 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
I've hit the snooze button a few extra times on this Monday morning. I don't blame you. I think that's part of the reality of returning from the old Thursday summer holiday break. You did miss Rick Carlisle, though, and he was outstanding per usual. We'll re-rack that coming up here in about an hour. A big reason why Rick joined us today, again, that Pascal Siakam re-signing press conference will come up here a little bit later this morning. He brought up game 2 of that Bucks series. And, it's kind of funny, Andy, when you make a playoff run or you have a playoff run, and we haven't had one in a while here in this market for the NBA or the NFL teams, you forget games. You forget moments. And, like, the Boston series, the general thought there is, man, 3 missed opportunities. The Knicks series, it's you celebrate the game 7. How do you not think back to game 3?
Oh, goodness, game 3, yeah.
Nemhard hits the shot from Fountain Square. Turner with the huge block to kind of, I would say, save the season at that point, as you were squaring, 3-0 deficit right in the eyes. And then Rick brought up the opening round against the Bucks. And, that series, it didn't have a lot of great in-game drama. Of course, game 3, you had Halliburton hit the floater there for the win. But he brought up game 2. With Siakam, and you had just gotten your ass kicked like none other in game 1. Blown out, thoroughly outplayed, outworked. I mean, Rick came on with us, remember, the morning of game 2. I mean, it was probably one of the more sweaty moments I've had in this studio, imagining what type of Rick Carlisle we were going to get. And Siakam had a moment there where it was just everybody hop on my back and watch what I'm going to do here on the road. In a game that we, obviously really need to have early in the playoffs. It's a game I've forgotten about, and I thought it was interesting Carlisle kind of brought that up in describing what Siakam meant, because it is so true, and honestly something that I should probably give Siakam a little bit more credit for in that realm.
Let me ask you this. With Siakam, I would imagine, and Obi Toppin goes into this as well, we've talked a lot about Jarris Walker. How much do we think and this is just me throwing this out here, how much do we think that the roles change? How much do we think now that Siakam got the big deal that how much more are we going to expect from Siakam this season?
Yeah,
I think all these are fascinating questions. Or is Obi going to be 18 to 21 minutes off the bench and that's what he's going to be? Like,
right.
I don't know.
I think it's a great question because I think Chad Buchanan said it with us a couple weeks ago of like, hey, it's Pascal didn't even get a training camp here. Tyrese wasn't I think, fully healthy with him here. Part of all of that checks, and then it's like, I don't think he has a game that's going to age badly.
You've said that consistently.
He's got an old man game, but like, do we maybe see some of that on the defensive end though? I mean, like, at some point, that's where the other bird on the shoulder is for me of like, well, let's not forget about that because you and I played the minutes game last week. I mean, when you play out the math, it's kind of wild how it's going to look. And again, it's a great problem to have. And obviously, if you want to hear candid thoughts on Jarris Walker, you heard it from Rick Carlisle, undoubtedly, on several answers with us last segment there. So, again, that Siakam news going to come, that press conference going to come a little bit later today, and just plenty to react to from that Rick Carlisle presser.
Yeah, and we'll replay that coming up in a little bit less than an hour. Mark will have it up on the podcast at 1075thefan.com. Again, if you missed it, we'll replay it. But listening to Rick, you said this, and I got thinking about it during the break. And I think I agree with you totally on this. I was trying to think, okay, can I, kind of punch a hole in this, and can we argue about this? But I don't think there's too much. I think that they have high expectations for Walker. I think he came in here thinking it was going to be one way and immediately found out it was going to be another way. And then on top of it, the team was a good team. They had defined roles. Guys stepped up, and they made the run in the postseason when they did. And so, Jarris Walker this offseason, I feel like Carlisle's comments made me think that there's things that he can do that some of the other guys cannot do. We've been talking about getting better internally on the defensive side. Obi Toppin's never going to be an elite defender probably. And Siakam, whether it's age, we know he's a guy that can go get a bucket. All these guys need to get better at defense. But they got to think because of the youth, the length, the body, whatever it may be, that Jarris can provide that. And on top of it, it sure as hell, KB, sounds like they want him to do that. And so, that's what I find interesting. Mathurin maybe fits this mold, although we didn't talk too much about Benedict Mathurin in 22 minutes with Coach Carlisle. It feels like, this offseason and the next few months, the maturation and then early parts of the season, Jarris Walker, if he can not only, I say make the team, you know what I mean by that, if he can be in the rotation on this team, to me, that's just the number one conversation piece for the Pacers.
Well,
and they want him to. I mean, that much is clear.
What they lack skill set wise, defensively, rebounding, however you want to describe it, what they lack in that area, Walker's background has much more of it than Mathurin. Now,
without a doubt,
I will, obviously stake in the ground for Benedict Mathurin. You still need him. And, 3-4 years down the road, Pascal Siakam is not going to be, that Robin to Batman. And Mathurin has that ability to, I think, be that in the NBA. So don't think for 1 second that all of a sudden the ship or my thoughts are sailing on Benedict Mathurin. But I think you hear Rick's passion, for lack of a better term, in describing Walker.
No, that's a pretty good word, passion.
I think it comes from they know it's in there. Like, they know that the missing ingredient for this team is more with Walker than it is with Mathurin. Again, Mathurin is still vitally important to you, and I think there are moments even in the playoffs where, yes, defensive issues were probably more the consistent theme, but still, you had some offensive lulls where, boy, could he just help you out, getting you an easier bucket or getting to the rim like he does so well. So I think that's where some of it lies with Walker.
I hate to just throw this all on Walker, and Mathurin's a part of this, and guys stepping up, even a guy like Isaiah Jackson. We talked about Wiseman and Jackson earlier on. To a certain, and listen, and Halliburton fits his mold. I know Carlisle's come on here and said, Halliburton is still getting better as a player. He wasn't healthy all last season with the hammy and everything else, but there are just going to be players that need to pan out for this team to take the next step. And I continually feel that Jarris Walker is at the top of that list. That if this team is going to take the, when you talk about guys that just can do different things, Walker is one of those guys. When you talk about a guy you hopefully can defend at a much higher level than some of the other guys on your team and, in your rotation, KB, I feel like that can be Jarris Walker. Plus, NBA standards for the next couple years, he's not making a lot of money in a salary cap sport where you've put big money into Halliburton and Siakam and even $15 million a year to a guy like Obi Toppin, and you want to pay Nembhard and you maybe want to pay TJ McConnell as well. You need some guys that just hit in the draft, and he's absolutely one of them. And I just feel like, it's crucial for some guys to just flat step up. A.D. Mitchell probably has that with the Colts a little bit. And there's no doubt that Jarris Walker has that with the Pacers.
16 days from now, we'll have a Grand Park
16.
for Colts Report Day. Andy Sweeney in about 10. We'll get to our Colts question of the day.
It's a doozy.
Year threes, critical. Alec Pierce, Jelani Woods, Nick Cross. Of the three, who do you got the most confidence?
Yeah, we'll answer that question. We'll do it in 10 minutes. We'll let you hear from Rick Carlisle later in the show. It's a Monday. Appreciate you hanging out with us. Wake Up Call 93.5, 107.5 The Fan. one we put up there last time? Zach Johnson?
Oh, gosh, he's.
It was Zach Johnson, though, wasn't it? Yeah.
I can't stand
I mean, could anyone have done worse than Zach
He's a
Johnson?
loser.
Like, out of all the things in sports, tell us how you really feel. Out of all the things in sports over the last year, like, Zach Johnson's near the top of the list of failing at his job, is he not?
I'd rather have Nate Bjorkgren captain the U.S. Ryder Cup team, which I guess I think he's on Team Canada now that I think about it.
Is that it? All right. Coming up on the other end, our Colts question of the day. We'll do that. And then I'd have thought also we'll mix it in on Anthony Richardson. We'll have some fun. Reminder, Rick Carlisle will replay that later parts of the hour. One more hour to go. 9 o'clock hour coming up. Wake up call 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
Say OAR is a big old summer band. Saw them at White River last year. It's a rejoiner here. So we begin the 9 o'clock hour. It is Monday, July 8th, the wake-up call. As I've said all morning long, the most snoozed day of the entire calendar year. That's what I'm going with here.
Yeah, well, I think for adults, it's one of the biggest scary Sunday scary days that we have on the calendar, probably.
Mine started as soon as breakfast ended Saturday morning.
Oh, so you dealt with it for a day and a half plus.
Maddie looked at me and was like, will you
That's worse
please
than
just
me.
live in the present? And I'm like, I know, I should. But can
She
you
told you to live in the present?
But can you imagine the sun setting on Sunday?
Yeah, Sunday it hits me pretty hard. I try to stay busy, but you get to like 5, 6 o'clock or so, you know. It's like I'm gonna wrap things up and just go to bed, basically.
Well, I'll probably have a similar feeling coming up here in a few weeks. Colts training camp, although that begins in a midweek. Report day, Wednesday, July 24th for the Colts. We've done our Colts question of the day. Obviously, we had Rick Carlisle on this morning, and we'll re-rack that here coming up in a bit. But You actually like this Colts question today, don't
I do.
you?
Well, it's a doozy. Yeah, it's a doozy.
Time now for your Colts question of the day.
All right, you want to set it up? I'm
Yeah,
interested in where
sure.
you're going to go with this.
So I don't know why this necessarily popped into my head, but I'm starting to write a piece, which I did last year, and it takes a long time to produce, but it'll post our website the Monday of Colts training camp week of 53 questions on the Colts.
I like that.
53 guys.
So how many do you have right
the
now?
roster. So
you can't have all 53,
I
right?
have all 53 written
Really?
out,
Okay.
but I like to put like a sentence or two, with
Well,
each
sure, yeah,
question.
description,
So I'm
sure.
only about halfway through those.
But you
parts
know the
of this.
53,
But
I guess.
do.
Okay.
And,
Fair enough.
I started to scroll through it. I'm like, man, I've got a couple Alec Pierce related ones. I've got a couple Jelani Woods related ones. I've got a couple Nick Cross related ones. Like, weren't all of them in the same draft class? It kind of got me thinking about, if you go back to that 2022 draft, Colts did not have a first round pick. Obviously that was the Carson Wentz trade. And so they sat there and they ended up making a pick in round 2, Pierce. 3 picks in round 3. They traded back into round 3 to take Nick Cross, but it was Jelani Woods and Bernard Ryman. And to me, Ryman has been an unquestionable hit. I mean, obviously had the first half of his rookie year growing pains, but since then, I think he's been an above average tackle. And I think you're looking at an Anthony Costanzo type, 5-7 more years from Ryman, however long, because he's a little bit on the older side, however long he keeps on playing. But outside of that, Andy, the other 3, you enter year 3 with major question marks on each of them. So the question I pose to you would be, of those 3, Pierce, Woods, Cross, who do you have the most confidence in?
Boy, I tell you what, I guess I'm going to die on this hill. I wanted to try to go Nick Cross. Now, we did have the conversation, out of those 3, who needs to have kind of the big year. And I think we agreed that it was Nick Cross because of his position, right? Because of A, the position, and B, because a guy like Julian Blackmon just came back to the Colts for a year. But that's not the question we're dealing with. It's who do you have the most confidence in? And obviously, all 3 of these guys I have very little confidence in. You're making me pick. I'm going to die on the hill. I'm going to die on the Jelani Woods hill. That's where I'm going to go. Listen, I mean, it's clear that they went out with a guy like Alec Pierce, and they can say they totally believe in Alec Pierce, but they went out and they used a high draft pick in a second rounder to go get A.D. Mitchell. And I think A.D. Mitchell is going to cut in to Alec Pierce's time. So, I got to throw Pierce out until I see him be a legit NFL wide receiver instead of kind of a one-trick pony. I just can't go with Alec Pierce. And like I said, I need to see more of Nick Cross. Nick Cross needs to be really good this year. But this is a guy, KB, last year, I remember many weeks during the season, we had the conversation of, is Nick Cross even going to play this year? Was, if is he going to be on the field? And we didn't know that about halfway through the season. So for me, it's injuries kept Jelani Woods off the field, not poor play, not all these other things. Hopefully, you look at, he is still the guy that I think can be a difference maker in that tight end room. I don't buy into it too much because of the injuries, because we've only seen, a few, just a couple years ago, I've only seen just a few kind of glimpses into what he could be. But I'll go Jelani Woods, one of the 5 tight ends on the roster for the Colts.
It's interesting to look at these 3 dudes and see how they have gotten to their point in their careers. Cross, the youngest, I believe, one of, if not the youngest players, period, in that draft. He came out early out of Maryland and has been benched on a couple of different occasions. And with Cross, I think a big reason why you say there's so much pressure on him, probably the most pressure on him of the other 3 or the other 2, is because there's not a lot of others around Nick Cross. Like with Pierce, you mentioned A.D. Mitchell. With Jelani Woods, there's 3 or 4 other tight ends that some people might say they, believe in more, or at least have a little bit more consistency to their game. At safety, you don't say that. You go to Woods, you could just label it injury. You could just literally chalk him up right now to a 1 injury season, and outside of that, he was showing great promise as a rookie, and he should flourish in year 3. That's the way to look at it. I'm not saying that's how you're entirely looking at it, but that could be a way that you're looking at it. And then Pierce, I don't know if it's from listening to IndyCar radio so much yesterday, but there's an element with Pierce that if you were his agent, you'd say, hey, circumstance. who's been throwing my guy the ball?
Right.
And is this an IndyCar driver that was on a bad team and now is going to Penske or Ganassi? And by saying that with Anthony Richardson, what I mean is Anthony Richardson can chuck it down the field. Matt Ryan, Gardner Minshew could not. So now are you giving him the right tools to accentuate more of the second-round talent that the Colts saw in him? So again, all three of these are very different. Pierce has played the most snaps of any wideout in the NFL last season. Nick Cross, to your point, Andy, there were multiple games, many games, that he's just flat out not played.
He's been a healthy scratch in games, yeah.
On the defensive side of the ball. So, I mean, the right answer is probably Woods, but I'm not slamming the door shut on Pierce. I'm not. And I think it's part of the trust in Shane Steichen. It's part of you're going to remove some things off his plate. And then again, I think having Richardson is going to help him. The thing about Pierce is if you still look at his career so far, I think I have this number right. I could be off by a catch or two. Through 2 seasons, I want to say he's got 6 catches of more than 30 yards. I mean, that's a pretty impressive number. Like 2 seasons, 6 catches of at least 30 yards. I mean, if you be hard pressed to look up this stat, but like if you were to find, analytics that look into big plays and teams that tap into that, if you are able to dial up a 35 or a 42-yard play in a game on a drive, I would think that would, significantly increase your chances, obviously, of scoring on said drive. But in games that are defined by 3 and 4 points and a missed kick there and, a third down conversion here, you record a big play like that, and it can be the difference. So,
do you feel like people are giving up on Pierce? Because I do. I feel like the majority of fans have moved him aside and said, give me A.D. Mitchell.
Part of it is you've seen him the most of the 3. Part of it is the A.D. Mitchell shine. Those are big reasons why that people are giving up. Now, again, I think the counter to that would be, Pierce is driving for one of the subpar teams in IndyCar. And that's where, Minshew and Ryan come into play here. I guess is a one-trick pony enough. If he can give you that big play ability, you can't expect it every week. But if he can give that a little bit more, is that enough to suffice for you there? So, again, Woods is probably the right answer. But just to play out the game a little bit more, I think I've got a little bit more confidence in Pierce than the vast majority do.
Well, I tell you, I'm going back and I'm looking at the 2022 class, and obviously, Ryman, you're not paying him very much, and it's a position of power in the NFL, right? At that tackle position, and so you could look at this, KB, and say the 2022 draft. If I find my left tackle of the future, I can have some other guys kind of be average players, right? And all is good and well in the world. Right now, though, Chris Ballard, a guy that believes in his own and believes in the draft, that 2022 class ain't looking that good.
No.
I don't know if it's an F, but, right now, Alec Pierce has we just had the conversation about Alec Pierce. Jelani Woods has been injured. Ryman, move him aside. Again, he's great. Cross thus far hasn't, done what he thought he was going to do. You look at Eric Johnson, Ogletree, Curtis Brooks, Rodney Thomas got benched last season. So, right now there's not a lot of help from that 2022 class.
Yeah, I mean, if you find your left tackle of the future in round 3, there's no way I can give it an F. Obviously, I don't give it a very much higher than that, but I think it's it's at least a D, which, I guess.
Listen, I'm with you. I agree.
Maybe I'm grasping a little bit there, but certainly. And, it's added to it because it's not like you hit on the first round pick. Like, when they traded, what was it, a second rounder for Vontae Davis, back a decade ago, you could sit there and say to yourself, hey, look what you got here. DeForest Buckner draft the same way. Hey, you traded the 13th pick. Well, DeForest Buckner's been a pretty good player. You traded away your first round pick, and Carson Wentz was Carson Wentz.
Yeah, it didn't work out.
That probably adds to some of the sting to it at all. It's just it's just very critical when you look at those 3, and I would say something that Pierce and Woods have going for them a little bit more than Cross as well is, again, Cross you could point to age and just year 3 development and whatever. you knew it was going to be a redshirt year for him when you drafted him. The Colts kind of spoke to that when they traded for him. Hey, we thought he'd go in the second round pick, or we thought he'd be a second rounder had he gone back to Maryland and come out the next year. So boom, we feel it's worthy to make this trade now. I just don't trust like Gus Bradley helping Nick Cross, and I think it's harder to help defenders, to be fair, as much as I think Shane Steichen can dial some things up for Woods and Pierce, along with Richardson, of course, that can play into those things.
Let me ask you this, and this is it's not a good comparison, but who would be like, maybe not Jarris Walker, maybe it's more Benedict Mathurin. Who is that on the Colts? Is it a guy like Nick Cross? Is it one of the corners?
Well,
perhaps. I mean, I'm trying to think of, if you said guys that need to really, I mean, obviously Anthony Richardson needs to be. Richardson needs to be great, but I almost move him aside, right? I view him as, the Tyrese Halliburton, I guess.
I mean, maybe like Walker and Juju Brents is probably a fair comparison.
That's probably a good comparison.
I think it's a discredit to Mathurin to label anybody Mathurin on the Colt. Like, I'm trying to think of like who would be on the second tier. Like if you want to consider Richardson on the first tier, quarterback is just in a different stratosphere with how much they touch the football and how much they get paid, all the responsibility. So I think it's hard to compare, frankly, any NBA position or player to what quarterback can mean for an NFL franchise. But I don't know if there is that, again, that second tierish guy that like, I don't know, maybe if Kwity Paye would have had like a 13 sacks, a big number, more consistent pressure, maybe a 12 sack year or something like that, you label him. But I mean, Mathurin's the first Pacer since Rick Smits to be on the all-rookie team.
He's an established scorer, right? He's established NBA player.
Really proved himself. I don't think the Colts have had that, but that's why the run-it-backs are different. The run-it-backs with the Pacers, they won, and they still have two young-ish guys that weren't even part of that main winning this season. The Colts don't have the playoff winning at all, yet the guy that wasn't a part of 9-8 last season was part of it very little, is Richardson. And he was the 4th overall pick and, again, plays the most important position in sports. So that's where it is, I think, a little bit different.
All right, so we're going to take a break here early. Before we take a break, can I give you one thing here in like 30 seconds that I noticed over the weekend? Now, Tyrese Halliburton was a part of this.
Okay.
Did you happen to see July 4th weekend, what always happens with celebrities on July 4th weekend?
Yeah, Maddie brought this up to me.
Did she bring this up? So Michael Rubin, who is a billionaire, he's known for owning Fanatics, right? Among a bunch of other companies and entities and everything else. So Michael Rubin, you probably saw this if you're on the internet, social media, whatever, over the weekend. Michael Rubin always has, like, basically every celebrity, every sports celebrity seemingly in the world that's a big name goes to his July 4th party, okay? So you saw all these big quarterbacks and wide receivers, and Tyrese Halliburton was there. So you saw this, right? You know why I saw this.
The white party, right?
Tyrese Halliburton was there. Everyone's dressed in white and everything else. You will know how good of a season Anthony Richardson had if he's invited to that party next year. I'm telling you, because C.J. Stroud was there, Joe Burrow was there, but C.J. was there. Yeah. And so if Anthony Richardson goes out and has a big year, next year, we're all doing this together, we'll look at each other and you'll say Andy was right. If AR has a big year, he will be invited to the all-white party, whatever it is, July 4th weekend with billionaire Michael Rubin. How about that?
How does Chris Ballard get off the hot seat? Anthony Richardson gets invited to Michael Rubin's party.
Everything's good with the Colts if Anthony Richardson's there at that party. All right, let's do a morning check down. We'll do it after the break. And then Rick Carlisle, our conversation with him, we'll replay that to end the show. 9 o'clock hour keeps going. Wake up call 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
We return from the holiday break with quite the start here on this Monday morning. Rick Carlisle joined us earlier. If you missed any of that, we'll re-rack that here coming up in a few minutes. Outstanding, about 20, 25 minutes with the Pacers head coach. And he mentioned late in that interview, Andy, Indiana Fever got a big win over the weekend. We'll be out there on Wednesday. I'd say that probably qualifies as the best win of the year.
Yeah, I would say so. They didn't want to lose 4 straight times to the New York Liberty. And again, going back to Saturday over the weekend, that triple-double for Caitlin Clark, the Fever win 83-78. We've been talking, KB, so much on, Clark's been hitting right around the triple-double, a couple assists short or 1 rebound short, whatever it may be. But she finally got it on Saturday, 19 points, 13 assists, and 12 rebounds. Up next, it's going to be a Wednesday matinee against Washington. 4 games now for the Fever before everything pauses for the Olympic update. But again, over the weekend, 83-78 your final.
Yeah, big win for them. And again, Clark, that triple-double she got with 7 minutes left in the fourth quarter. All right, Major League Baseball from over the weekend. What sums up the Reds is I have to celebrate their All-Star.
Now, is Dela Cruz a pity All-Star, or is he an actual All-Star?
Yeah.
Like, you know how we get that.
I know.
But he's a good player, don't get me wrong. I just don't know.
Probably a fair debate. He's an entertainer. Paul Skeens made it. Speaking of entertainment, well, actually, he's really good at pitching, but some entertainment
he is
elsewhere
good
in his life. July 16th, this will be at the Rangers Stadium. I find it odd that Major League Baseball, if you look at the AL and the NL starting lineups, just represented by 5 teams in each league. In the NL, it's Phillies, Diamondbacks, Dodgers, Brewers, and Padres. In the AL, you go Yankees, Blue Jays, Astros, Guardians, and Orioles. There, if you're looking to catch a little outdoor baseball coming up here this week, you can do that over at Victory Field. They are off today, but they'll be home the rest of the week before they hit their All-Star break. So July 9th through the 14th, Indians hosting, as they did over this past weekend, the Louisville Bats. It'll be the Columbus, what are they, Clippers?
Yes.
Sound right?
Mhm.
That's who they'll have in
Good
town
pull.
this week.
Over under 1.5 camera shots to Paul Skeens' main squeeze at the All-Star game.
Will she be there?
Oh, I'm sure she will.
Livy Dunn, will she be there?
She's not in the
She will.
Olympics.
She was at the Michael Rubin all-white party.
Was she?
Well, did you see they had Burrow and I think Justin Jefferson, Odell Beckham, her, and maybe another one.
Brian
And,
Kelly?
Brian
Represent
Kelly.
the LSU
Brian
group.
Kelly was not there.
No,
but it said
he was not.
It said why not go to LSU? And I was thinking, it's not a bad advertisement. Why not go
Sure.
to LSU? Of course,
Brian
Odell.
Kelly at the white party would have been quite the scene, I think.
That's fantastic. Are you a sap for when guys find out they made the All-Star game?
Yeah, I kind of like some
When the
of it.
manager or the team they
yeah.
find out and they lift them on the shoulders or whatever. So
I think it's cool to see the emotion.
it's fun. It was a good time. So that was Major League Baseball. Quickly, Pato Award wins in Ohio over the weekend. We took control. What I think Alex Pillow stalled with like 24 laps to go in the race, and Pato Award got the win there. They put the sombrero on him and everything after, so that was a lot of fun. And then quickly in the NBA, Buddy Hield, 2 for 21. We talked about that earlier. 2 for 21. He goes to the Golden State Warriors, and then in a 3-team deal, DeMar DeRozan ends up with the Sacramento Kings. The Kings kind of trying to load up a little bit.
Yeah,
The Western
I think it's
Conference.
smart to do something of a veteran.
He's a good player.
There.
I mean, I like DeMar DeRozan. He's a good player.
Chris Duarte back to the Bulls. Or
I
should
believe
say
that's
back
it.
to the
There you
Eastern
go, Mark.
Conference. Is
Turn your mic
on?
on.
I
Yeah.
said that in a
You
tweet.
don't
I said I
care.
totally forgot Chris Duarte was in the league.
I did too.
Cleo Ware, very nice start to summer league down there in Miami. Pacers, Zach Edey, most of the NBA teams, they'll start their summer league here coming up later this week.
All right, what did Rick Carlisle say about Pascal Siakam? What did he say about Summer League and especially Jarris Walker? We talked to him in the 8 o'clock hour. We'll let you hear that conversation next with the Pacers head coach right here on a Monday on The Fan.
Well, earlier in the show, we had quite the return from the holiday weekend. Rick Carlisle joined us. Outstanding conversation on many topics. Our first chat with the Pacers head coach in about a month and a half, and it's a big day over at Gamebridge Fieldhouse, and that's where we started off this conversation. Pascal Siakam, Rick mentioned to us back at the end of the season, number one goal was to re-sign him. They will announce that officially coming up later today, and consider Rick Carlisle a happy man.
The first thing is just to simply acknowledge that you got to recruit this guy. And as I mentioned to you guys back then, whenever it was 5-6 weeks ago, we had this in Dallas where Dirk Nowitzki would become a free agent, and everybody would just assume because Dirk was such a great guy and he had such a close relationship with Mark and the city that he would sign back, and no one would look to poach him or anything like that. And you got to be careful about that stuff because guys have choices and they have options. And we're talking about, in Dirk's case, one of the great players of all time. LeBron James was in Miami for 4 years and then he left. And then, it's just, so you just don't know. So that was the reasoning for that. And then, there have been conversations in the interim. Took a trip down to his home in Orlando to talk to him about, the situation. We had a great meeting with him, his agent, Todd Ramasar, in Orlando. It was me, KP, Chad, and Lloyd Pierce went down there. And during the meeting, we learned even more about Pascal. Just in a quiet setting in a restaurant, room with the door closed, and we just wanted to hear more about who he was, even though he was here for 4 or 5 months or whatever it was. It's still just a beginning, and so coming away from that meeting, we were all even more convinced that this guy was really special, and Kevin was able to get the deal done, and today we celebrated.
Rick Carlisle with us here on the Payless Liquors Hotline. Just as a follow-up to that, Coach, I don't think I've ever asked you this. It seemed like when he came over here, the marriage was immediately a great blossoming marriage. He said such great things about you and the organization, and you guys in return said great things about him, and then the play on the court was good as well. Did you know when you were trading for him that this marriage was going to be this good? Is there any way you can know, Coach, before you go make a big substantial move like that in the middle of a season?
Well, you have a lot of resources that, point you in the direction of something that you think is going to work. And, certainly there were a lot of metrics that made sense with Pascal. But if you recall, when we first got him, he played well, but we were in a tough part of the season and we weren't winning an awful lot. And Tyrese was in the process of coming back and then kind of hit the reset button on coming back. And so, we had some struggles, but looking back on it, had we not had Pascal, we could have gone into the abyss. Sure. Because, there were a lot of tough games that we were able to win, but just simply by virtue of having him, when Tyrese was either just back on the court, or we were waiting for him to be back on the court again. So he was super important to us as things went along. He really got his comfort level with what him as a leader and as a voice on the team was going to look and sound like, and it just organically happened. And in the playoffs, he's the guy that had the most experience of anybody in our room, So all those things were very important. And he had some amazing moments. You look at the Milwaukee series. Game 2 at Milwaukee was the pivotal game that put us back that gave home court to us. And then, in the Knicks series, he was he and Tyrese were both spectacular in Game 7. And so, without, what he did in Game 7, we certainly don't beat the Knicks. So, big day, and once again, I can't stress it enough. The word historic is not an overblown word here.
Again, it'll be the Pascal Siakam re-signing press conference coming up later this morning here. Rick Carlisle, Summer Chat with the Pacers head coach here on the Payless Liquors hotline. Coach, I think when we talked to you at the end of the season, you kind of anticipated, probably not a ton of activity this offseason for you guys. Obviously, the Siakam goal accomplished. Obi Toppin is back. Draft, you guys didn't get into round 1, made those 3 selections. Is this kind of how you envision the offseason going of, for the most part, it is largely running it back and relying on the internal growth?
Yeah, and there was, we weren't sure what was going to happen with Jalen Smith. He had a player option, and, he's played extremely well here. Injury interrupted the kind of year he was having. Like halfway through the season, he was he was having a historic 3-point shooting year and playing at a super high level. And then he got banged up for a while, and it just was hard for him to get back to that. And so, we got into the playoffs with Milwaukee and decided to play smaller against Milwaukee so that we could get Obi on the floor more, and he played some small ball 5. And then, Jalen fell out of it a little bit, but a lot of it really had to do with the injury situations that happened during the year. When we did go to playing an additional center other than Miles, Isaiah was getting the minutes. And ultimately, Jalen decided to opt out, and he got a great deal with Chicago. So, it's tough losing a guy like Jalen Smith on the one hand, but on the other hand, he came here in a trade. Our situation really resurrected his career. He was a starting 4 for us, and then he was the backup 5. And then if you recall, last Christmas when we made a real recommitment to defense, he became the starting 4 again because we needed length and rebounding, and he was one of our best rebounders at the time. So, the fact that he comes here for 2 years, has his level of play really skyrocketed during parts of it, and then is able to get a 3-year, $27 million deal. That's great for him, and it's also great for us.
What have been your conversations this offseason, whether it's directly related to Vegas upcoming or in regards to going into year 2? What have your conversations with Jarris Walker been about here, again, as he enters Summer League and then, of course, his second NBA season?
Hard play. And, I think it's something that is so important to get across to young players. He came into this season with expectations, and we had some really honest conversations with him during the year, but we had even more of them after the season. And I think the expectation was that he was just going to be given an opportunity or granted an opportunity. And, as our conversations on this show, on a weekly basis during the year, I use the term earn it a lot. And so when the season was over, we talked to him about getting back in the gym here in Indy, preferably, and getting to work on gaining a level of conditioning that was going to be his best ever. And so he got back in the gym for 3 straight weeks. And Jim Boylan was the guy that worked with him individually. And, not coincidentally, last summer, Jim worked very closely with Isaiah Jackson and Jalen Smith. And, they used the heavy ball, and it was a lot of, rote repetition of just doing hard things at a high level. I mean, it's just difficult. It's kind of like a football training camp, and you can't make the guys do it. I mean, it's their choice. But those 2 guys, Jalen and Isaiah, both had the best years of their career this year. And so we suggested that Jarris do the same thing with Jim. He did it for 3 weeks, and now he's in training camp for summer league. And here's the truth: positional size is such an important part of defending at a high level in the NBA. And we've put it out there to him that if he can demonstrate that he can play with a high motor, a high level of physicality, that he can rebound and that he can take on a defensive matchup, that he's a guy that can be a factor in our rotation and perhaps even a major factor. But this is not just, words. I mean, this is going to be a lot of work. And so we've had 2 practices. I've been out of town. I've been watching them on film, and I'm back in town today. We have a practice today after the press conference. And, as we talked about during the season, in the playoffs, the 17 playoff games were won almost every single time by the team that was A, more physical, and B, got more rebounds. And so if he can demonstrate that he can have that level of physicality, that he can retrieve the ball, and number 3 is that, he can take a matchup and as Pascal and other guys did, and Aaron Neesmith, and really literally everybody in our team in the playoffs, I mean, we picked up full court, and, to make the game our kind of pace, we picked up full court defensively and had constant pressure on the other team. If he can demonstrate those things, then he's got a chance to play for the Indiana Pacers this year. Now, I haven't even talked at all about his natural gifts that we've seen. He can shoot, he can score, he can handle, he has vision. We all know he played point guard before. He has great feel for the game. But those things don't guarantee anybody anything in this league unless you can bring the level of physicality, the motor, et cetera. So this is a very important summer for him. I'm watching it very closely. We're watching it very closely. He's done his part so far, but we're really at the beginning of this.
Coach, and Rick Carlisle with us here on the Payless Liquors Hotline. I want to follow up on that because obviously so many people are just interested. I know Coach Pargo came out and said, hey, he's going to play the 3 for us in Summer League. We talk about, being a better defensive team, internal growth. No doubt that Walker is a part of that. When you guys have challenged him, whether it's during the season or now after the season, is he a quiet guy? How does he respond to you guys challenging him?
Well, he's a very smart kid. And he's got great tools, and he's from a great family. And so, during the season, it was a little different. I mean, he worked and did all those things. But you get into the NBA season, and, the summer is where young players really grow because you can take on a task and you can really attack it. And so this is his time. This is his time to gain that level of consistent fight and everything I've been talking about. And I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but this is so much about hard consistent play. And a player like him has to simply decide that he is going to, fight his way into the lineup. And so that's what this whole thing is. And look, I don't care how many points he scores this summer. I don't care, how many assists he gets or how many pretty plays he makes. We're looking at what is the motor looking like? Is he, can he consistently hit people? Can he rebound? Will he, can he consistently run, and his conditioning level better than the guys he's played against? And that's where it's at.
And Rick Carlisle with us here, a little summer chat. Big day. Pascal Siakam, that re-signing announcement press conference going to take place later this morning. Off to Vegas here later this week for not only Summer League action, but also watch Tyrese Halliburton and Andrew Nembhard in that matchup coming up Wednesday night for their respective countries. Before we get to that part of it, Coach, I want to go back to something you said at the end of the season with us, and you mentioned obviously you have Tyrese. The hope was Pascal would return, and you said maybe internally we need to develop another star player. How do you view that with your current makeup and the guys, some of the young guys that you do have on your roster right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty obvious. It's the two guys are Mathurin and Walker, and I just gave a whole thing on Walker's situation, and Ben Matherin's deal is similar. And interestingly, as you looked at our team in the playoffs last year, do you guys know who the number one net rating player was on our team last year in the playoffs?
I guess Nemhard, but I could be very off on that.
No, it was Ben Shepherd. And it was Ben Shepherd really by a pretty good margin. And if you look at the things that Shepherd does, I mean, from a coaching standpoint, he's like one of the most likable players in the history of the game. I mean, he just goes so hard. He only takes open shots. He defends without fouling pretty well. He has length. He has positional size. And, he got his opportunity, and he went in there and filled a role. Now, based on what I'm telling you guys, he starred in that role. So, look, the word star, we got to be careful, right? I mean,
Sure.
These guys view the word star culturally, the young players in the NBA as the guy that gets all the touches, the shots, and the money. I mean, that's how it's viewed. And we're in the process of developing a different culture here, where we're developing players to be great competitors and to star in their roles. And so, look, Mathurin has great physical ability. He has skill. We know he has a nose to score. He's got to become more of a speed player and more of a quick decision player, and he's got to be able to take on defensive matchups. All right, that's one thing. And then I've just went through the whole thing on Walker and said the same thing. So, our approach with these guys has got to be that we've got to be very demanding about those things, and their level of physical ability, their level of basketball talent gives them a chance to succeed at a high level and help our team grow. But I do not want to confuse the word star with something having to do with a guy that's a perennial all-star, or those kind of things. If that stuff happens, great, and that would be the ultimate goal. But these guys have to learn about the competitive aspect of this to have a chance. And they got a guy that really, in the end, was the most effective of any of our young players last year that just does those things. He's a 4-year player at Belmont, and he has the tools that allowed him to do that, and he did it at a great level. And so, hats off to him. And now these guys have got to learn from that, and they've got to jump in.
Pacers head coach Rick Carlisle with us on the Payless Liquors hotline. Again, that introductory press conference, the re-signing of Pascal Siakam coming up in a couple hours at about 11 o'clock. Coach, I want to go back to Tyrese Halliburton, because now, there's been a couple Team USA practices and everything, and we're a couple weeks away from the Olympics. And I love so much the Olympics and obviously Team USA basketball. I know you'll get to see it, I think, Wednesday night. I think you'll get to see the scrimmage they have against Canada. But just in general, Tyrese being out there, the experience that he's going to get playing with so many great Hall of Fame players. But, as his coach here on the Pacers, how do you watch Halliburton playing on another team being coached by another bench of coaches? How do you do that? Can you take anything away from any of it?
Yeah, I hope to, certainly. And look, it's such an amazing opportunity for him to be around those guys. Like, he's going to be around LeBron James every day. And I don't know exactly what LeBron James does to keep his body that strong and everything. But I tell you what, if I'm a guy like Tyrese, I'm watching very closely, to see his training regimen, and I've heard it's legendary. I mean, the amount of detail, the amount of time spent. I've just heard it's just out of this world. You got that. You're there with Kevin Durant. You're there with all these other guys. I mean, it's the opportunity of a lifetime, and you have an opportunity to earn playing time on that team. And so it's going to be very interesting. I mean, like you look at Canada's team. I mean, Canada's loaded. Canada's loaded with great guard play. They've got Murray. They've got Gilgeous-Alexander. They've got Nembhard. And they got Dort. They got Dylan Brooks. I mean, they got great wing players, growing on trees up there. And their challenge is probably going to be that they don't have a bunch of big guys, but they've got some big guys. Dwight Powell's an experienced international player. Olynyk is, and I think Kem Birch is the other big guy. And Zach Edey was slated to play with them, and I guess he's not going to now, and so that's a big hit for them. But the game Wednesday to me is going to be a fascinating game to watch.
Again, that'll be Wednesday, 10:30, as Team USA gets their scrimmages going before Paris, and Team Canada, of course, as well. Coach, we can't thank you enough on the Vegas agenda. My wife and I just got back about a month and a half ago. Are you a Vegas guy? Do you embrace the lifestyle of Vegas? Don't want to get you into any gambling related questions here, but how's the Vegas lifestyle meet Rick Carlisle?
Well, I'm not a Viva Las Vegas type person, but it's this time of year it's become a happening out there, and the way that they schedule the games in prime time with the big draft picks, et cetera, I mean, and everything, it is, if you're out there, it is a buzz for 2 straight weeks, and it's unlike anything else. And so, a lot going on. I mean, you got the Aces out there that they play some home games during that period, and you got a bunch of NBA players sitting courtside. We haven't even talked about the Fever, and they're playing up a storm right now, which is great to see. And so, yeah, it's an exciting time. And as I mentioned to you, we'll be watching Jarris very, very carefully. We didn't even talk about Johnny Furphy. He's a guy that our scouts had as the number 14 player in the entire draft, and we got him at 35. So we feel pretty fortunate there. And so I'll get to put my eyes on him in person today for the first time. I'm looking forward to that. And all these games will be on TV, so all our fans can watch. They'll either be on, I believe, ESPN or NBA TV. So it's a great time of the year.
Certainly Friday, the first Summer League game. Coach, can't thank you enough for reaching out, and appreciate you hopping on with us. I know it's a fun day, not only for you, but certainly for Pascal as well. So congrats on that. Safe travels to Vegas, and hopefully we can chat again before we get things started here coming up in a few months.
All right. Take care, guys.
11 a.m. today, it'll be Rick Carlisle, Kevin Pritchard, Pascal Siakam, among others, over there at Gamebridge Fieldhouse for that re-signing press conference announcement. Again, Andy, I know I'm biased, but I just think Rick gives some very detailed and very candid answers when it comes to the variety of questions that we throw at him, and whether that's in season or out of season, I feel like we get that. And the Jarris Walker stuff, truly, truly fascinating, I think, and how much they believe that there is something in there that they lack, and how they'll get that out of them, and what that'll look like with their current group. It's going to be a huge storyline this season.
Yeah, I mean, he basically came out and even said it there, at the very end, talking about Walker. I mean, his quotes in there like, I'm watching Walker very closely.
Yep.
We're watching Walker very closely. And then they outline, after the season, most definitely during the season. And he talked about that a couple times during the year with us. But, after the year, basically laying out that, hey, this is what we need him to do. This is what we want him to do. There's an opportunity to absolutely be in the rotation. At one point there, about halfway through, Carlisle's like, he could get a lot of run in the rotation. And so now it's up to him to be the player that they need him to be. And I just find that interesting. I think it's the number one storyline you get for the Pacers this offseason, is it not?
Yeah, again, Friday will be the start of Summer League for the Pacers. They're guaranteed 5 games out there. We know the date for 4 of those 5 games. I thought the Johnny Furphy stuff there at the end.
Yeah, 14th.
14th overall there. That is also something that stood out to me. So, again, Pacers Summer League going to begin on Friday. You will see some players and teams, the Heat, Khalil Ware, one of them have already started playing, but it'll be Friday and Sunday. Both of those are at NBA TV next Tuesday, next Thursday. Both of those ESPN family, ESPNU and ESPN2.
I say this and I mean it. When you hear that they had, and I have every reason to believe them on this, okay? Carlisle gave this information to us. We didn't even ask about the draft. Johnny Furphy, 14th overall. I don't know. You tell me they got him, 34th or 35th? They moved up that one spot to get him. We knew it was value. We knew people nationally were praising that the Pacers found value, but I don't know. Him telling you we had him 14th on our board. I don't know, man. That just seems like it seems like when we talk about a guy that if you're going to pay contracts to guys that are big paid money guys, and now they have at least, I would say, 3 on that roster, and that number you would say would grow. Hell, 4 if you count, Miles Turner on the final year of $20 million per year. You're going to have to find guys that just don't make very much money that can hit the board, right? That can hit your rotation. And, perhaps you have that a little bit with Matherin and Walker. But, Johnny Furphy being a second rounder, just go back to Andrew Nembhard. Andrew Nembhard's making $2 million this year and will be a starter and will play over 25 minutes a game. You got to have some of those. In 2 seasons, Furphy might be that guy.
Yeah, at some point you pass the torch, to various guys on your roster. And yeah, to that point, Andy, financially, your roster is going to continue to tighten and continue to be a lot different here moving forward. So big thanks to Rick Carlisle for hopping on with us.
Yeah, we'll have that up on the Podcast Center, 1075thefan.com. Have a good afternoon. We're back at it. Wake up call, 7 a.m. tomorrow.